Chapter 373. Vermilion Bird was slightly taken aback. She glanced at Ayuan in the distance and said calmly, "No." Mika Kito pursed his lips. "Ayuan is very innocent. Don't let him get hurt. Don't tell him about us." Suzaku felt as though something had pricked her heart. She looked at him quietly. "I've said it before. It has nothing to do with Ayuan. You don't have to worry that I'll lead him astray." Mika Kito looked upset. He didn't mean it that way. He only wanted to let her be with Ayuan, but he was afraid that Ayuan would mind their relationship. That was why he asked her to hide it from Ayuan. "If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. I'm taking the day off." She glanced at him and turned to leave. He suddenly said, "Wait a minute." She turned to look at him. He pursed his lips. "That's not what I meant." She looked calm. "What?" He was a little annoyed and frowned. "Forget it. It's nothing. You can go." She nodded casually. "Help me tell Ayuan." That night, Vermilion Bird returned home very late. A luxurious car drove her downstairs, and a handsome blonde man came down from the driver's seat and helped her out from the passenger seat. She was like a puddle of mud leaning on the handsome man's arms, with an intoxicated smile on her face. Mika Kito stood in front of the window on the second floor and watched coldly as the blonde man helped her press the doorbell. Then, he heard the sound of the servant welcoming Suzaku in. She heard the sound of stumbling footsteps and the servant's worried voice. "Miss Suzaku, please be careful. There's a staircase here." Suzaku was tall, more than 1.7 meters. In comparison, the maid who was supporting her only reached her shoulders. The petite maid was tired and worried. She was afraid that Suzaku would fall down. It was not easy for her to help her to the corridor on the second floor. She was already sweating. "Hoo-hoo." The maid heaved a sigh of relief. She suddenly raised her head and saw a tall figure standing in the corridor. She hurriedly called out respectfully, "Eldest young master." Mika Kito looked calmly at Suzaku, who reeked of alcohol. Suzaku's head was drooping and she was leaning on the maid. She looked very drunk. The maid could not bear the burden and was panting. He slowly approached them and grabbed Suzaku's arm. He abruptly pulled her away from the maid and into his arms. He said indifferently, "I'll send her back to her room. You should go and rest." The maid bowed respectfully. "Yes, young master. Good night." Suzaku was extremely disobedient. She moved her body and giggled foolishly. He did not know what she was mumbling. Mika Kito knew how much she could drink. She must have drunk a lot to be so drunk. There was an inexplicable anger in his heart. She was drunk and alone. Didn't she know that this was very dangerous? Who was the blonde man who sent her back just now? She staggered and almost fell. Fortunately, he held her slender waist firmly and pulled her up. She was pressed tightly against his chest. She looked up in confusion and mumbled incoherently, You. Who are you?" His face was ashen. He held her with one hand and pinched her chin with the other, forcing her to look directly at him. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. "Take a good look at who I am." Her starry eyes were slightly open and her delicate brows were slightly furrowed. She looked like she was thinking hard. She smiled foolishly and said, "Ayuan." "You're Ayuan." Mika Kito had the urge to throw her away. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pouted her red lips. She said pitifully, "Ayun, I feel terrible. I feel terrible here." She pointed at her chest. "My head hurts too." Mika Kito's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He said angrily, "Who told you to drink so much? It would be strange if your head didn't hurt." He simply carried her up horizontally and threw her onto the bed. She rolled on the bed in a daze, her hands pulling at her clothes. She was wearing a V-neck black off-shoulder t-shirt and high-waisted jeans. Her t-shirt was lifted up by her, revealing the graceful lines of her waist. Her fair skin glowed with a healthy luster under the soft light. She took off her shirt and threw it off the bed. The black bra wrapped around her chest and her soft pink peaks were perky. Her cleavage was faintly discernible and her fullness was on the verge of bursting out. Mika Kito's face twitched uncontrollably. This damned woman. Did she think that he was dead? He quickly pulled up a thin blanket and covered her body. She frowned impatiently. Her fingers touched the zipper of her jeans and pulled it open. She moved her slender waist and took off her pants. She reached out from under the blanket and threw her pants off the bed. Her movements were too big. The blanket on her body was lifted to one side, revealing her fair and slender legs, her flat and tight stomach, and half of her black panties. Perhaps it was because of the alcohol, her whole body was hot. Her exposed skin felt the cold air of the air conditioner, and it was incomparably comfortable. She still felt that it was not enough, and threw the blanket covering her upper body to the side. Her right hand reached behind her back, and it seemed that she was going to unbutton her bra. Bei Tangshen was a little stunned. His face darkened even more. He quickly pulled the blanket over and covered her body again. Let go. It's hot. Suzaku moved her body unconsciously. Her charming face had a languid and flirtatious look that was unique to drunk people. Mika Kito's body stiffened. A blurry image uncontrollably appeared in his mind. He was panting heavily and sweating profusely. The woman under him was moaning coquettishly like a puddle of spring water. His Adam's apple bobbed. Blood gushed down his throat. He wrapped her up like a dumpling with the blanket. His voice was slightly hoarse. Stay still. Don't move. It's hot. Her starry eyes opened slightly. She looked at him blankly with her watery eyes and pursed her red lips. I'm hot. His body tensed up and his deep eyes became even more serene, intertwining with something that no one could understand. He clenched his fists tightly and suddenly stood up. He strode out of her room and slammed the door shut. Standing in the empty corridor, he placed his right hand on his chest. His heart was beating rapidly in his chest. His eyes gradually regained clarity. He told himself that he was a normal man. It was normal for his blood to surge when he saw that scene. Good morning. Suzaku rubbed her aching head and slowly walked down the stairs. The two people in the dining room looked up at her at the same time. Hiroshi Kito had a bright smile on his face. Wuyu, good morning. Mika Kito didn't look too good. He glanced at her indifferently, then lowered his eyes and focused on the breakfast on his plate. A faint fragrance wafted into her nose. She sat beside him. The maid placed her breakfast in front of her and placed a bowl of hangover soup. Miss Suzaku, this is the hangover soup that second young master instructed me to make. Suzaku politely thanked her. Then she smiled at Ayuen, who looked concerned. Ayuen asked, Wuyu, why did you drink so much last night? Mika Kito paused. He seemed to be waiting for her answer. Suzaku shrugged nonchalantly. It's rare for me to have some free time, so I went to the bar to relax. Mika Kito asked indifferently, Who was the man who sent you home last night? Suzaku raised her eyebrows. I don't remember. When she felt that she was drunk, she grabbed a man from the bar and asked him to send her home. She didn't know the man's name. Mika Kito's eyes flashed. His voice deepened. How dare you sit in a stranger's car? She looked at him in amusement. Do you think anyone would dare to do anything to me? He retorted sarcastically. Who was the one who was drunk last night? Even if I sold you out, you wouldn't realize it. She said indifferently, You don't have to worry about me. Bei Tangshin's fist had landed on cotton. He was so angry that he almost died. The fire in his heart was raging. He glared at her and gritted his teeth. I'm your superior. I have the right to control you. She glanced at him indifferently. Even if you're my superior, you can only control my work. You don't have the right to control my private life. She stood up and said slowly, I don't think it's suitable for me to stay here anymore. I'll move out today. What was this? Was she drawing a line between herself and him so that she could pursue her private life? Mika Kito's deep eyes were like a storm. He clenched his fists so tightly that the veins on the back of his hands were throbbing. He said coldly, From the moment you signed the agreement with me, you're my subordinate. You have to listen to my orders, whether it's for personal or private matters. I order you not to move out. Suzaku looked at him calmly with a trace of pity in her eyes, as though she was looking at an unreasonable child. Her red lips moved and she said indifferently, If you want to use the agreement to bind me, I have nothing to say. Boss, I'm full. Do you have any orders for me now? Deep down, she was an arrogant person. Even when she was forced to work for him, she had never used honorifics. But now, she was using honorifics to him. Mika Kito's cold gaze was like a sharp knife stabbing into her body. But she didn't feel anything. She stood a few meters away from him calmly and said slowly, "If you don't have any orders for me, I'll go upstairs first." She even bowed respectfully to him. Mika Kito was so angry that he threw the coffee cup beside him. The coffee cup rolled to her feet and the coffee spilled all over the floor. It even splashed onto her trousers. She didn't care at all. She bent down and picked up the coffee cup with a humble attitude. She walked a few steps forward and put it back on the table. She smiled faintly and turned to go upstairs. His expression became colder and colder. His gaze was fierce like a violent lion staring at its prey. He walked out of his territory step by step. Ayuan carefully glanced at Mika Kito's ugly expression and said softly, "Oni-san, you look so scary right now." Bei Tangshen's body suddenly trembled. What was he doing? Toward subordinates who didn't listen to him, he would always directly kick them out of the Yamaguchi-gumi. There was no need for him to waste time getting angry with them. Why was he so angry now? He was crazy. Everything was messed up ever since that night. Damn it! Beauty novel, Song Shu 566. Chapter 374. Saturday morning. Before dawn, Mika Kito was woken up by knocking on the door. Hiroshi Katato stood at the door with a huge backpack on his back. He grinned at him. "Brother, Wu, you and I are going camping in Hokkaido." Mika Kito frowned. "When did you decide?" Ayuan clasped his hands together and looked apologetic. "Last night. I'm sorry, brother. Wu Yu said it was a little secret between us and she didn't want me to tell anyone else. That's why I can only tell you now." Mika Kito's face darkened. "Where is she now?" "She's already downstairs." "Brother, do you want to come with us?" Bei Tangshen furrowed his brows and looked at him with an unfathomable gaze before saying, "Go downstairs and have breakfast first." "Okay." Ayuan scratched his head and walked downstairs slowly like a little snail with a thick shell. 10 minutes later, Suzaku and Ayuan finished their breakfast. They carried their luggage and were about to go out. Mika Kito was wearing casual clothes and carrying a huge suitcase as he walked downstairs. Suzaku instinctively looked at Ayuan. Ayuan covered her mouth with her right hand and blinked her beautiful eyes innocently. Mika Kito looked at them indifferently and said slowly, "Everything is ready. Let's go." Suzaku said indifferently, "I only booked 2 tickets." In other words, she didn't reserve a seat for him at all. Mika Kito said casually, "Cancel the tickets and take my private jet." Suzaku's expression didn't change. "Yes, boss." The calm expression on Bei Tangshen's face cracked open. Ayuan took a sandwich from the dining table and put it in a food bag. She said with a smile, "Brother, I'll leave this for you to make breakfast on the way." Mika Kito smiled. "No need. I'm not hungry." Mika Kito's private jet was parked at Narita Airport. The cabin was luxuriously decorated and comfortable. Not long after the plane took off, Ayuan shouted that she wanted to catch up on sleep. She threw herself onto the soft and comfortable bed in the lounge and refused to get up. Suzaku and Mika Kito sat in the living room, each choosing their favorite sofa. One of them read newspapers and magazines to pass the time, while the other used the flight time to have a video conference with Zhang Dao and the others. A few hours later, the 3 of them arrived at Hokkaido. Hokkaido's summer was different from Tokyo's high temperature and dry heat. The climate was pleasant, and the cool breeze was gentle. It was very suitable for camping. The 3 of them rented 3 mountain bikes and rode them to visit the lakes and mountains of Hokkaido. The morning air was fresh with dew and the fragrance of wildflowers. A thin mist shrouded the forest like gauze. The green lake meandered quietly in the wilderness. Large patches of golden sunflowers bloomed all over the hillside. There were also many unknown wildflowers blooming on both sides of the road. Suzaku relaxed completely in this paradise. She welcomed the wind, bathed in the sunlight, and leisurely rode the bike. Her lips curved into a smile that came from the bottom of her heart. Ayuan rode the fastest. She walked in front alone. She turned around and shouted to them, "Brother Wu Yu, the scenery in front is so beautiful. Hurry up and come over." Vermilion Bird smiled and said, "I'll be right there." She sped up and rode her bicycle past Bei Tangshen. Bei Tangshen inadvertently turned his head and saw her at this moment. Her entire body was bathed in the sunlight with a tranquil smile on her face. Her hair was tied up in a high ponytail, and her fair skin was flushed red from exercise. She was extremely youthful and beautiful. He seemed to see the shadow of another person on her body, and his gaze couldn't help but become deep and serene. They camped on the hillside by the lake. 3 tents were set up side by side on the lawn. Suzaku used the ingredients she brought and prepared a simple but delicious dinner. A bonfire was lit on the lawn, and the sky was dotted with stars. Ayuen and Suzaku sat in front of the fire and chatted. Mika Kito was on the phone in the distance, instructing Jiang Dao on something. When he came back from the phone call, he saw Ayuen whispering something in Suzaku's ear. Both of them had bright smiles on their faces. It was so dazzling that he found it dazzling. He wanted to stop, but he turned around and walked towards his tent. Outside the tent, Suzaku and Ayuen's happy laughter could be heard from time to time. Mika Kito pinched his eyebrows. He turned on the music and put on his headphones. Late at night, the 3 of them fell asleep one after another. Mika Kito was awakened by a shrill scream. He opened his eyes abruptly. It was Ayuen's voice. He quickly climbed out of his sleeping bag and ran towards Ayuen's tent. Ayuen! Suzaku also ran over. Her long hair was loose, and she was wearing shorts and short-sleeved pajamas. She looked anxious. Mika Kito opened his tent and turned on the light. He saw Ayuen in his sleeping bag, sweating profusely. His face was abnormally red, and his brows were furrowed. He was muttering something. Ayuen, wake up! Mika Kito called his name in a low voice. Ayuen suddenly trembled and slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were full of pain. He stared blankly at Mika Kito and Suzaku. His voice was hoarse. Xiao Qing came to find me. She said it was all my fault. I killed her. She said the cemetery was cold and dark. She didn't want to stay there. Oniai-san, did I do something wrong? I should have been with her all the time. Ayuen, listen to me. Mika Kito held his shoulders and stared into his eyes. She said solemnly, you just had a nightmare. You didn't do anything wrong. Xiao Qing is a very kind girl. She won't blame you. She wants you to live a happy life and not live with guilt for the rest of your life. For Xiao Qing, the best thing is to be buried in peace. She should go where she belongs. Tears welled up in Ayuen's eyes. His lips trembled a few times, and he threw himself into Mika Kito's arms and burst into tears. After a while, he wiped his tears and turned to Suzaku. Wu-yu, I'm scared. I want to sleep with you. Okay. Suzaku answered without hesitation. Mika Kito's expression was gloomy. She said in a low voice, no. If you're scared, move into my tent. Ayuen widened his eyes. I don't want to. I slept with Wu-yu last time. That's different. Mika Kito's face was gloomy. Ayuen was delirious last time, but now he was a normal man. I don't care. I want to sleep with Wu-yu. Wu-yu agreed. Ayuen's stubborn temper rose. He was so stubborn that it gave people a headache. Mika Kito's eyes tightened and said in a deep voice, Ayuen, you're no longer a child. Don't be willful. Ayuen was startled and said with tears in her eyes, Brother, you actually yelled at me. Suzaku bit her lips, and finally couldn't hold it in. She stared at Mika Kito and said coldly, all right, stop blaming Ayuen. Even if we live in the same tent, we'll sleep in our own sleeping bags. You seem to be worrying too much. Her tone carried a trace of ridicule. Did he really think that if she liked Ayuen, she would lead Ayuen astray? Mika Kito's heart ignited with an unknown flame. Did she know the difference between men and women? Even if she acted like a man all day, she couldn't really live in the same room with a man, sleep in the same bed, and flirt with a man right under his nose, right? Mika Kito was furious. He wanted to throw this shameless woman into the lake to feed the fish. Brother, don't show such a scary expression. I'm scared. Ayuen's eyes flickered, and she hid behind Suzaku. Mika Kito's face was ashen, and his sharp eyes glared fiercely at Suzaku. Do whatever you want. He left the 2 of them and crawled out of the tent, so that he wouldn't be angered to death by the 2 of them. Ayuen and Suzaku looked at each other and fell silent. A few seconds later Suzaku smiled. Wait a moment, I'll go get my sleeping bag. Oh, okay. A few minutes later, The two of them were lying side by side. Their sleeping bags were next to each other, and their heads were leaning against each other. Ayuan turned her head and looked at Suzaku, saying softly, "Woo you, my brother was jealous just now." Suzaku pursed her lips. "Don't talk nonsense. He can't wait to kill me." Ayuan puffed her cheeks. "If he's not jealous, then tell me, why is he so angry?" Suzaku sighed. "It's simple. He thinks that I like you, and he thinks that I'll lead you astray and steal you away from him." Ayuan frowned. "Didn't you tell him that we're just good friends?" "I told him, but he didn't believe me." Suzaku closed her eyes and didn't want to talk about it anymore. "Let's go to sleep. We have to wake up early tomorrow." Ayuan's brows were almost knitted into question marks. He felt that Suzaku's words made sense. However, Uncle Hanzo clearly said that his brother had feelings for Suzaku. He had already done so many things. Shouldn't his brother be jealous? The matters of the heart are so complicated. The occasional unhappiness didn't affect Suzaku much. The next morning, she still respectfully called Mika Kito boss, and greeted her with a good morning. Mika Kito looked as if he was frozen, and his whole body was emitting a cold aura. Suzaku didn't mind his cold face. She washed up, prepared breakfast, packed her luggage, and prepared for the next stop of the journey. Her and Ayuan's trip was originally scheduled to take a week, but Mika Kito suddenly joined them, so they decided to shorten the trip to 5 days. On the 4th day, they stayed in a valley and ate food that they bought when they passed by a village. There were also 3 cans of beer. Everyone had a bottle. They sat by the campfire, ate grilled fish, drank beer, and listened to the sound of the stream in the valley. They were far away from the hustle and bustle of the city, far away from the bloodshed and killing. Everyone's body and mind were completely relaxed. Suzaku looked at the moon in the sky, her voice a little lonely. "We're going back tomorrow. I suddenly feel a little reluctant." Ayuan smiled brightly. "It's okay. We can go out and play together often in the future." Suzaku smiled slightly, her eyes filled with warmth. Mika Kito drank silently, his face expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Ayuan went missing. To be exact, Ayuan left Mika Kito and Suzaku alone on his bike. Moreover, he used a knife to cut the tires of their mountain bike, took their communication equipment, and left them in this remote valley. Come and see. Shinwoo 799. Chapter 375. Oniai-san, Woo-you, I'm very sorry for what I did, but I don't regret it at all. I know there are some misunderstandings between the two of you. Since there's no third party around, please resolve the misunderstanding. I'll be waiting for you at the airport in Hokkaido. You must come back safely. Ayuan. Mika Kito's mouth twitched. He crumpled the note Ayuan left for them into a ball and threw it into the trash bag. It seems like we can only walk out of here. Suzaku was checking the tires of the mountain bike to make sure that there was no way to repair them under the current conditions. Mika Kito glanced at Suzaku, who was squatting in front of the mountain bike, and opened the map. It's 24 kilometers from here to the road outside the mountain. We can catch a bus on the road back to the county. Suzaku suddenly looked up and stared at him. Boss, did you bring money? Mika Kito's face darkened, and his eyes were filled with displeasure. Don't call me that again. Call me Mika Kito like before. She stood up and shrugged. That's not the point. The point is that I realized that Ayuan took my wallet. Mika Kito's eyes flickered. He rummaged through the suitcase, and sure enough, the wallet was gone. He was annoyed and amused at the same time. Little brat, you've planned this well. We're penniless now. Even if we walk out of this valley, we can't take a bus or buy food. After Vermilion Bird understood how serious the situation was, she didn't get angry, nor did she get irritated. Instead, she calmly packed her luggage. Mika Kito glanced at her and said indifferently, "There's always a way out. Let's get out of here first. There's always a way to solve the other problems. Simplify your luggage and throw away all the unnecessary things." The two of them threw their tents, sleeping bags, and other things into a cave so that they wouldn't pollute the environment. Anyway, they would be able to return to the county by the end of the day, and they wouldn't need these things anymore. After the reorganization, their luggage was very light when they returned. The two of them carried their luggage and set off on their journey. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed in the forest. They walked on the small path, but no one said a word. After walking for more than an hour, Mika Kito, who was walking in front, saw a mountain spring. She stopped and turned to look at Suzaku. After exercising, her face was flushed, like a beautiful apple. He said indifferently, "Are you thirsty? There's a spring up ahead." The spring water in the mountains was clean and clear, with a hint of sweetness. These days, they had been drinking mountain spring water. Suzaku put down her backpack and took out a stainless steel cup. "Boss. Wait a minute. I'll go get some water." Mika Kito's eyes darkened. "I told you not to call me boss anymore." She looked at him steadily and smiled faintly. "But you're my boss. You said that from the moment we signed the agreement, I'm your subordinate." Being attacked by her using his own words, Bei Tangshen felt a little irritated in his heart, but very quickly, his mood calmed down. He reached out and took the cup from her hand, and said indifferently, "Do you feel better now?" This woman was quite good at holding grudges. Suzaku was slightly stunned. She watched as he turned around and walked to the spring with the cup. He filled the cup with spring water, walked back to her, and handed the cup back to her. He was tall and slender. Although he was carrying a backpack and wearing casual clothes, it didn't diminish his handsome and domineering aura. His arm was raised very straight, and his slender fingers gripped the cup tightly. His expression was calm, as if this was how it should be. "What are you waiting for? Take it." She didn't take the cup, so Mika Kito stuffed the cup into her hand. She held the cup but didn't drink it. She pursed her dry lips and handed the cup back to him. "You drink first." He raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. "You're not calling me boss anymore?" She bit her lip and glared at him in annoyance. "You drink first." He didn't take the cup and said seriously, "You drink first. I won't despise you." Vermilion Bird choked on his words, and her face turned slightly red. She tilted her head and drank half the cup in one breath. Then she poured the water out of the cup and said, "Wait for me." She took the cup and ran back to the mountain spring. She refilled the spring water and handed it to him. He looked at her deeply, took the water and gulped it all down. They rested for a while before continuing on their journey. Before they left, they took another cup of water in case they needed it. Soon it was noon. They weren't very tired since they were both physically strong, but they were hungry. They were about 2 kilometers away from the highway. The hillside was filled with fruit trees. The apples and pears were already ripe, and the tempting fruits were hanging on the treetops, giving off a fragrant smell. Suzaku and Mika Kito looked at the fruit garden at the same time. The two of them looked at each other, exchanging a message with their eyes. There was no one in the fruit garden. Suzaku coughed. "Do you want to go or should I go?" Mika Kito said slowly, "Of course you want to go. It'll be embarrassing if I get caught." Suzaku's mouth twitched. "It'll be embarrassing if I get caught too." He looked at her seriously. "I'm a man. I have to care about my reputation." He just didn't want to go. Why did he have to come up with so many excuses? Suzaku complained in her heart. She put down her backpack and placed it beside his feet. "Help me look after my things." She was wearing a checkered shirt and jeans. For convenience, she had tied the hem of her shirt up, making her waist look especially defined. She rolled up her sleeves and was about to jump over the fence when Mika Kito suddenly grabbed her wrist and pursed his lips. "Let me go." Suzaku was a little surprised. She couldn't understand why he suddenly changed his mind. He jumped into the apple orchard suavely and picked the big red apples. Suddenly, they heard a dog barking. A black wolfhound pounced towards Mika Kito. Behind the wolfhound was an old farmer carrying farming tools. Suzaku heard the dog barking and her heart was in her throat. She stood on her tiptoes and watched for a few seconds. Suddenly, she saw Mika Kito walking over with an old farmer. He was carrying a few apples and a huge wolfhound was following behind him. Suzaku knew that he had been caught by the owner of the fruit garden. She supported her forehead with one hand and tried to think of a solution. She lowered her eyes and saw the watch on her wrist. She quickly took it off. Mika Kito looked humble as he bowed to the old farmer. "I'm sorry. Please forgive my actions. I'll compensate you." The old farmer looked unhappy. You young people don't understand the hard work of fruit farmers at all. Mika Kito bowed again. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Suzaku grabbed his arm and pulled him up. She smiled at the old man and said, Uncle, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I like to eat sour food recently. When I see apples, I'm sorry. I asked him to do that. We don't have any cash on us. Can I give you this watch as compensation? She held the watch with both hands and presented it to the old man. The old man's expression softened slightly. He sighed and said, It's not that I don't want to part with those fruits. It's just that there have been too many thieves recently. It's just a few apples. Take it. There's no need for compensation. Suzaku quickly bowed and thanked him with a smile. The old man seemed to have thought of something. He looked at her from head to toe and said, Miss, you like to eat sour food recently? Suzaku nodded. Yes. I don't know why. I used to hate sour food the most. The old man smiled. When my wife was pregnant with my son, she liked to eat sour food too. I guess you're going to be parents soon. Mika Kito's eyes narrowed and his fingers clenched into fists. Suzaku widened her eyes in surprise and stammered, No, no way. The old man laughed heartily. You youngsters are really careless. Suzaku seemed to be shocked for a moment. She smiled awkwardly. No wonder my appetite seems to have increased recently. The old man looked serious. You can't let the child starve. Have you eaten? If you don't mind, you can come to my house for lunch. Suzaku said gratefully, Uncle, thank you so much. Hubby, we have food to eat. Mika Kito froze. Although he knew that she was putting on an act, he still felt special when she called him hubby. The old man's wife had already prepared lunch. Since there were 2 guests in the house, she hurriedly cooked 2 dishes. She was so enthusiastic that Suzaku felt guilty. She felt that she had deceived a kind person. When they bid farewell to the old couple, Suzaku left her watch on the dining table when they weren't paying attention. The old man personally walked them to the path leading to the highway and reminded them to be careful on the way. As far as the eye could see, there were only the 2 of them on the field. Bei Tangshin suddenly stopped, turned his head, and stared straight into the vermilion bird's eyes, and said in a deep voice, What you said just now, is it true? Suzaku paused. What is it? Mika Kito's tone became heavier. About the pregnancy. She said calmly, Of course it's not true. I just want to cheat a meal for us. His eyes were filled with suspicion. Are you sure? She frowned. Of course I'm sure. I've taken the morning after pill. I promise I won't cause you any trouble. His thin lips pursed and his face was expressionless. You better be. He wasn't ready to be a father yet. Moreover, if the child was conceived under such circumstances, no one could say for sure if there would be any defects under the influence of the drug. Unfortunately, before he could finish his sentence, Suzaku misunderstood him again. She thought that he didn't want her to get pregnant at all. Her eyes darkened and she said calmly, Let's not talk about such things that will never happen. She walked past him and quickened her pace. Her seemingly thin shoulders were carrying a big bag, and her back was straight and magnanimous. She exuded an air of arrogance that refused to admit defeat. There were very few cars on the highway. It took almost 10 minutes for a private car to arrive. Mika Kito raised his hand to signal to the driver, but the driver ignored him and sped past him. His face was as dark as the bottom of a pot that had been burning for decades. Add Shinwoo 799. Chapter 376. The next time a car passes by, I'll stop it for you. Suzaku placed her backpack by her feet. She took off her shirt and tied it around her waist. She was wearing a black tank top underneath. Her hair was tied up high, revealing her beautiful neck and slender arms. The afternoon sun shone on her body, giving her a bright glow. She was like a hibiscus, slender and elegant, pure and proud. Even in the midst of a noisy crowd, she was able to remain calm and indifferent, making her memorable. A car drove over from afar. Suzaku pulled the collar of her tank top lower, revealing her cleavage. She ran to the road and raised her right hand with a gentle smile on her lips. Sir, please stop the car. Screech, the car's tires screeched against the asphalt road. A middle-aged man rolled down the car window and stared greedily at Suzaku's chest. Suzaku smiled faintly. Sir, please give me a ride. The man revealed a perverted smile. No problem. Get in. Wait for me. Suzaku ran to the side of the road and picked up her backpack. She grabbed Mika Kito's arm and dragged him. Let's go. When the driver saw Suzaku and Mika Kito walking over, his wishful thinking fell through. He immediately changed his expression and stepped on the accelerator without waiting for them to open the door. The exhaust from the car sprayed their faces. F***CK. Suzaku was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She threw her bag on the ground and gave the driver the middle finger in the direction of the car. On the other hand, Beitang Shen had a calm expression on his face. His shoulders couldn't help but slightly tremble, and a deep smile appeared in his eyes. Suzaku glared at him and said fiercely, "Don't hold it in. Laugh if you want to. I'm so angry." Mika Kito did not disappoint her at all. He laughed loudly, and his joyful laughter echoed on the empty road. He looked very good when he laughed. His sexy lips were slightly curved, and his eyes were full of smiles. His cold and handsome face softened, and he looked more elegant. His laughter was deep and mellow, like wine that had been in the cellar for many years, exuding a charming fragrance. Listening to his laughter, Vermilion Bird's irritable heart actually slowly calmed down. She fixed her gaze on him, her beautiful eyes slightly narrowed. She discovered that this man's influence on her was getting bigger and bigger. This was not good at all. She shook her head hard and turned around abruptly. With her back facing him, she forced herself to get away from those wild thoughts. Beitang Shen retracted his smile and looked at her graceful back. There was still warmth in his eyes that had not dissipated. Vermilion Bird felt a weight on her head, and a man's sun hat fell on her head, blocking the dazzling sunlight. Shifting her line of sight, she saw that Beitang Shen was already standing beside her. His thin lips were slightly pursed, and his eyes were calmly looking straight ahead. His perfect side profile appeared even more charming under the sunlight. "Thank you." Her voice was very soft. "You're welcome." His voice was cold. In the end, they still couldn't flag down a car. Perhaps it was because they were in the wilderness, and people were very cautious. They wouldn't take the risk of picking up two strangers. Fortunately, there was always a way out. A white van drove over. Mika Kito stood in the middle of the road with his arms open. He stared coldly at the driver in the van, and he exuded an imposing aura. He didn't look like a hitchhiker, but more like a robbery. The driver stepped on the brakes in a panic. The middle-aged woman sitting in the passenger seat poked her head out of the window and shouted at Mika Kito, "What are you doing? Do you want to die?" "I'm sorry, madam." Suzaku hurried forward and explained with a smile, "Madam, we want to go to the county, but we haven't seen a car. I'm not feeling well, so my husband got anxious. I'm sorry for scaring you." The middle-aged woman looked back and forth between Suzaku and Mika Kito suspiciously. She seemed to be considering whether they were telling the truth. Suzaku hurriedly tugged at Mika Kito's arm and said softly, "Honey, apologize to madam." Mika Kito's expression softened, and his tone was gentle. "I'm sorry. My wife is pregnant, so I'm worried about her and the baby." The middle-aged woman didn't say anything, but the driver next to her interrupted. "Honey, if that's the case, let them get in the van." The woman thought for a moment and said, "Okay, but we don't have any seats in the front of the van. If you don't mind, you can go to the back of the van." I don't mind. Thank you, brother and sister-in-law." Suzaku smiled and thanked them. She gently tugged at Mika Kito's arm. Mika Kito smiled. "Thank you." The driver jumped out of the van and opened the door of the back of the van. An unpleasant smell assailed their nostrils. The driver smiled good-naturedly. "There are dozens of chickens in here. The smell is a little strong." The woman also got out of the van with a few magazines in her hand. She handed them to Suzaku. "Use this as a cushion in the van. You can sit for a while. Pregnant women can't stand for too long." "Okay, thank you." Suzaku smiled and took the magazines. She calmly climbed into the van as if she didn't smell anything. It was very dark in the van, and the cooing of chickens could be heard in the darkness. She fumbled for a few steps and stopped near the wall of the van. She took out a small flashlight from her suitcase and turned it on to illuminate the van for Mika Kito. Mika Kito stood on the ground, frowning slightly. He seemed to be unable to bear the pungent smell inside. Suzaku smiled and said softly, "Honey, come on up. It's very spacious inside." Mika Kito swore that if it wasn't for this woman, he would never have forced himself to climb into that smelly van. 10 minutes later, the van started moving. The two of them were already sitting on the magazine cushion. They pinched their noses and endured the unpleasant smell. Mika Kito was still thinking about this serious problem. Why did he listen to Suzaku and climb into the van? Was it because they couldn't stop other cars? Obviously not. At most, they could forcefully stop other cars and force the driver to take them. Then why? He frowned and was still thinking. Suddenly, he felt a weight on his shoulder. Suzaku's head was resting on his shoulder. Her soft body was pressed against his, and he could hear her steady breathing. He shrugged his shoulders. Her chin moved, but she didn't pull back. Mika Kito's mouth twitched. She actually fell asleep in such a harsh environment. After an unknown amount of time, the vermilion bird slowly opened her eyes. It was pitch black, and an arm was wrapped around her waist. A broad palm was tightly pressed against her waist to maintain her balance, and her head was leaning on someone's broad shoulder. She was suddenly startled, and quickly retracted her head and straightened her body. "Sorry, I fell asleep." Mika Kito slowly withdrew his hand from her waist and said indifferently, "You can really sleep. You can even fall asleep in such a place." She coughed, and there was a hint of embarrassment in her tone. "I can even fall asleep in worse conditions. I'm sorry." In the darkness, Bei Tangshen couldn't see the other party's appearance and expression clearly. He had to rely on words to analyze the other party's emotions, so he could hear her embarrassment at this time. He couldn't help but imagine what kind of situation it would be if her ice-cold face revealed an awkward expression. He smiled. "You don't seem to have mentioned the past," she said indifferently. "There's nothing to talk about. I just went through training and was groomed to be an assassin. It's very simple." She said it lightly, but Mika Kito knew what it meant. She had to train day and night, sweat mixed with blood, physical and mental torture. The ruthless assassin training was like purgatory on Earth. He was silent for a moment and said slowly, "Have you ever thought about not being an assassin anymore?" She sneered. "What else can I do other than being an assassin? From the moment I killed the first person, there was no turning back. I can set you free." When he said those words, even Bei Tangshen himself was shocked. Suzaku was stunned. Why? He should be cold and ruthless. He should be scheming and shrewd. He wouldn't do anything that would harm his interests. She was still useful to him. He shouldn't give up on her so easily. Mika Kito frowned and said angrily, "There's no reason. Are you not willing to set you free?" She was silent for a moment and laughed softly. "Thank you. But you can't threaten me with Director Lin anymore." He frowned even more. "You're both free." "Thank you." Her tone was relaxed and happy, which made him a little frustrated. She suddenly said, "Words are no guarantee. We'll sign the agreement when we get home." "I'm going back on my word. You've already lost your freedom." Mika Kito's voice was cold and didn't sound like he was joking. Suzaku laughed self-deprecatingly. "Forget it. I don't have any expectations anyway." She knew that he wouldn't be so kind all of a sudden. The van stopped. Soon, the door of the van opened and faint light shone in. The driver's voice was heard. "We've arrived at the county. Get out." The two of them stood by the roadside and watched the van drive away. Mika Kito patted his clothes in disgust as if there were many invisible germs on them. Suzaku looked at the sun in the sky and said, "What are we going to do now?" "Let's find a hotel first and inform Lu Xing to pick us up." Mika Kito was a clean freak and couldn't stand the stench of chicken dung on his body. "We don't have any money left." Suzaku felt that it was necessary to remind him. He glanced at her indifferently. "I have a watch too." And his watch was worth a lot of money. The two of them found a clean and tidy hotel and pawned their watches to the hotel owner. Then they called Lu Xing, who was staying in Hokkaido, to pick them up. 2 hours later, Lu Xing arrived in a high-class car. Bei Tangshen and Vermilion Bird had already changed their clothes and were enjoying the delicious dinner personally prepared by the proprietress of the hotel. It was getting late and Mika Kito decided to stay for the night. The next morning, Suzaku felt that something was wrong with his body. Come and see. Hongcha 866. Chapter 377. When she brushed her teeth, she felt nauseous. Perhaps she had drunk too much and her stomach was upset. That was her guess. However, at the same time, she was calculating in her heart that this month's period would be in the next 2 days. If her period came, then everything would be fine. If it didn't come, she would need to buy a pregnancy test paper. Vermilion Bird sat in the back seat of the car, her whole body leaning against the soft back of the seat, her slender fingers rubbing her temples. She didn't look too good. Her face was pale and bloodless. Mika Kito was sitting beside her. He turned to look at her and said calmly, "Are you not feeling well?" She closed her eyes and replied, "Yeah, my head hurts a little." She suddenly felt a hand on her forehead. It was cool and comfortable. He said unhurriedly, "Your body temperature is normal. Perhaps you didn't sleep well last night. There's still a long way to go. Take a nap first." He retracted his hand and the cool touch disappeared. She actually felt a little disappointed and despised herself for acting like this. She turned her body and curled up in a corner. An arm wrapped around her waist and pulled her to his side. He pressed her head forcefully against his shoulder and said firmly, "Lean against me." With his other hand, he took a blanket and covered her body. She felt a sour and bitter taste in her heart. Her long eyelashes fluttered a few times as if she wanted to open her eyes. In the end, she closed them tightly. She wanted to ask why he was so good to her. She also wanted to say that if he couldn't give her love, then he shouldn't be so good to her and let her fantasize about him. Mika Kito hugged her and looked down at her sleeping face. His gaze was deep. When Lu Xing saw this scene through the rearview mirror, a smile appeared in her eyes. In her heart, she was full of admiration for Beitang Yuan. It seemed that this move of the second young master really had a positive effect. The relationship between the eldest young master and the Vermilion Bird had advanced by leaps and bounds. Perhaps it was because his broad shoulders made her feel at ease. Perhaps it was because she was too tired, but Suzaku fell asleep very quickly. When she woke up, she realized that she was already leaning on his chest. Beside her ears, she could hear his heart beating powerfully. At the tip of her nose, she could smell the unique fragrance of his body. When she moved slightly, Mika Kito opened her eyes. She tightened her grip on her waist and whispered, "You're awake? Does your head still hurt?" Suzaku got up from his arms and smoothed her messy hair. "I'm much better now. Thank you." The Hokkaido trio finally met up at the Sapporo airport. Hiroshi Kitado was wearing a white t-shirt, jeans, and a sun hat. His handsome face was full of smiles, and he looked like an adorable puppy, wagging the non-existent tail behind him vigorously. "Brother Wu Yu, you're finally back safely." Mika Kito snorted with a straight face. "Thanks to you, we're not lost in the valley yet." "Brother, don't be so petty. I'm doing this for your own good." Ayuen happily followed behind them. She tugged at Suzaku's arm and asked with a smile, "Wu Yu, you won't blame me, right?" Suzaku stopped in her tracks. She raised her hand and knocked on his forehead. She said snappily, "I was almost angered to death by you. But seeing that you were kind, I'll forgive you." Ayuen acted cute with tears in her eyes. "You're really magnanimous. I'm so grateful." Mika Kito shook her head in amusement. After the Hokkaido trip, they returned to Tokyo. Ayuen keenly noticed that the relationship between her brother and Suzaku had improved a lot. Although they still didn't interact much on the surface, they were no longer at daggers drawn and cold. It seemed that what he did was very effective. Ayuen had the motivation to continue. "Oh yeah." Suzaku realized that things seemed to have gotten out of hand. Her period was already more than half a month old, but there were still no signs of it coming. She hid it from everyone and went to the supermarket to buy a pregnancy test kit. After the test, she sat in a daze on the toilet for more than half an hour. Damn it, she was pregnant. She had clearly taken the morning after pill. She held her forehead with one hand. Her head hurt and her heart was in a mess. The servant knocked on her door and invited her downstairs for dinner. Suzaku took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. She threw the pregnancy test kit into the trash can, washed her hands, sorted out her emotions, and slowly went downstairs. She had something on her mind, so her appetite wasn't good. Her chopsticks picked up the food intermittently, and she didn't even know what she had stuffed into her mouth. She bit down lightly, and her mouth was filled with the taste of fish. She felt disgusted and her stomach churned uncontrollably. She threw down her chopsticks, covered her mouth, and hurriedly ran downstairs to the bathroom. What's wrong? Ayun hurriedly put down her chopsticks and stood up. Just as she was about to chase after her, she remembered something and stopped in her tracks. She turned to look at Mika Kito. Brother, Yu doesn't seem to be feeling well. Do you want to go and see her? Bei Tangshin's deep and serene gaze retracted from Vermilion Bird's back and leisurely landed on her bowl. It was a half-eaten piece of fried fish. Suzaku lay on the toilet and vomited until she was dizzy. Her eyes were filled with tears from vomiting. Mika Kito crossed his arms and leaned against the bathroom door. He watched as her thin shoulders trembled from vomiting. After a moment of silence, he finally walked up to her and patted her back. After a while she stopped vomiting and gasped heavily for breath. He asked in a deep voice, "Are you feeling better?" She nodded. She didn't dare to raise her head and let him see her sorry state. "Go out first. I need to tidy up." He left and closed the bathroom door behind him. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale, her hair was messy, and her eyes were filled with panic. She didn't look like herself at all. She sighed, rinsed her mouth, and patted her face with cold water. She raised her wet head and looked at herself in the mirror. She decided to hide it from everyone and solve this problem. The corridor of the obstetrics and gynecology department of the hospital was filled with pregnant women. Some of them were like Suzaku. There were no visible signs of pregnancy on their abdomens, but they looked very nervous. They must have come to the hospital for a checkup to confirm if they were pregnant. Suzaku still had a glimmer of hope. She thought that there was a problem with the pregnancy test kit she bought and that the test results were wrong. However, after the doctor's examination, he gave her a death sentence. "Miss Lin, congratulations. You're 6 weeks pregnant." Suzaku's body stiffened. Her fingers clenched into fists, and her nails dug into her palms. After a long time she said, "Doctor, I don't want this child." The doctor was slightly stunned and frowned. "Miss Lin, abortion is illegal in our country." Suzaku smiled. "I know, but this law is obviously not binding. The abortion rate in Japan is still very high. I don't have the ability to give the child a complete family. I can't give birth to her. Doctor, please help me." The doctor sighed. "Have you thought about it?" Vermilion Bird nodded. "Yes, I've already thought about it." On the other side, Mika Kito was having a meeting with his subordinates. Zhang Dao quietly pushed the door open and walked to his side. He leaned in and whispered in his ear, "Boss, the maid in the villa called. She said that she has something important to report to you." Mika Kito asked him to transfer the call to the meeting room. The maid's voice was agitated as she said intermittently, "Young master, I was cleaning Miss Suzaku's room just now and found a pregnancy test kit." "She's pregnant." Mika Kito's fingers suddenly tightened around the phone. A storm suddenly gathered in his eyes. The scene from last night flashed across his mind. Suzaku was sensitive to the fishy smell and vomited for a long time. At that time, he had only suspected it, so he had asked the maid to pay more attention to Suzaku. He did not expect that she was really pregnant. He hung up the phone with a bang. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. Everyone in the meeting room lowered their heads, not daring to look into his cold eyes. Mika Kito clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, "Where is Suzaku? Ask her to come to my office." Zhang Dao lowered his head. "Suzaku asked for leave today. She seems to be feeling unwell and needs to go to the hospital." As soon as he finished speaking, Mika Kito strode out and said in a deep voice, "The meeting is over. Zhang Dao, prepare the car." "Yes, sir." Mika Kito was expressionless. He exuded a powerful aura as he strode out. Everywhere he passed, all the employees bowed and did not dare to breathe loudly. Zhang Dao followed closely behind and ordered the driver to drive the car to the entrance of the company. After getting into the car, Mika Kito called Suzaku's phone. It was turned off. The nearest hospital to the company was the first hospital. Suzaku might have gone there. He ordered the driver to drive to the first hospital. His fingers gripped his phone tightly. His heart was filled with complicated emotions. She was pregnant. He could not help but recall the conversation they had about the child. She was such a proud and resolute person. She would definitely not go back on her words. She would definitely abort the child. Aborting the child was the result he wanted. But why did he not feel happy at all? There was only an indescribable sense of panic. He was not ready to be a father, but he was not cruel enough to kill his own child. Once he understood his feelings, Mika Kito's eyes shone with determination. He said in a deep voice, "Hurry up." Vermilion Bird was lying on the operating bed, quietly looking at the ceiling. In his heart he silently said, "I'm sorry." These apologies were for the child who was too late to be born. She was not a responsible mother. The nurse slowly injected the anesthetic into her body. She started to lose consciousness. Her eyelids felt heavy and she wanted to sleep. She felt someone pulling her legs apart. A gentle female voice comforted her and told her not to be afraid. She wanted to say that she was not afraid. She just felt sorry. The moment she closed her eyes, the door of the operating room was slammed open with a loud bang. Suzuka's last consciousness stopped at Mika Kito's stern voice. "Stop." Add, Songshu 566. Chapter 378. 2 hours later, when Suzuka regained consciousness, she was already lying on her bed. A tall figure was standing by the large window. The faint sunlight shone on him through the curtains, making it seem like a dream. Suzuka rubbed her temples and got up from the bed. Mika Kito heard the noise and turned around. His gaze fell on her, and it was so deep that it made her shudder. He slowly approached her, and his entire body exuded a domineering and cold aura that made her feel suffocated. Suzuka met his gaze calmly and said indifferently, "I took the morning after pill, but I didn't expect it to be ineffective. I'm sorry to have caused you trouble." Her tone was calm and distant. She didn't treat him as the child's father at all. It was as if they were strangers living under the same roof. Mika Kito felt an inexplicable anger rise in his heart. He stared at her with a gloomy face. "Why did you hide it from me?" She ran her fingers through her hair and said calmly, "I thought I could solve it. If you hadn't appeared, this problem would have been solved." "Damn woman, why didn't you ask for my opinion? I'm the child's father." On the way to the hospital, Mika Kito had already accepted this fact. He even started to think about how to fulfill his responsibilities as a father. Suzuka's lips curled into a mocking smile. She stared at his face calmly. "Have you forgotten that you once expressed your wish not to have children? I thought your opinion was already very clear." His expression froze. "I've changed my mind now. Even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. I'm not so cruel as to kill my own child." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly reached out, grabbed her arm and dragged her down from the bed. He suppressed his anger in a low voice. "Come with me." "Where to?" She instinctively struggled. He pulled her into his arms, and his arm wrapped tightly around her slender waist. He threatened in a low voice, "Try moving again." Suzaku bit her lips. Yes, she was not as good as him in terms of physical strength and martial arts, but that did not mean that she would surrender and let him do whatever he wanted to her. She lost her cool and her eyes were filled with anger. She vented the resentment in her heart at him. "Beiteng Shen, what are you trying to do? I've had enough. Let go of me. I don't need you to meddle in my affairs." "Shut up." Mika Kito held her tightly in her arms, her eyes burning with anger. "Don't move. If you hurt the child, I won't let you off. You lunatic, what are you trying to do?" "Let go, I told you to let go." Suzaku was forcefully dragged downstairs by his arm. She quickly grabbed the railing of the stairs. Her fair skin was dyed red with anger. She gritted her teeth and said, "If you don't make it clear, I won't go with you." She was like an angry kitten, her fur standing on end as she stared at him warily. The mask of indifference and heartlessness had cracked, leaving only anger. Mika Kito actually found this side of her very interesting. He restrained his cold and stern aura, and his tone was much gentler. "Let's go visit Director Lin now to discuss the marriage." "No, I've said before that I don't agree to the marriage." Suzaku was slightly stunned and immediately hugged the railing even tighter. Mika Kito suppressed the anger in his heart and tried to reason with her. "We already have a child. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the child. Do you want the child to be called an illegitimate child the moment he's born? She slowly said. So you're marrying me for the child? He pursed his lips and slowly said, Yes. She chuckled. I understand. Her smile was as bright as a spring flower, but it made him feel uneasy. His lips moved a few times, and he wanted to say something, but he could not. In the end he gave up. Bending down, he caught her off guard and lifted her up by her waist. She smiled faintly. Put me down. I promise I won't run away again. He lowered his head and looked at her. He did not put her down as she wanted. He was still wary of her. He carried her directly and put her in the front passenger seat of the car. After fastening the seatbelt, he sat in the driver's seat. The afternoon sun quietly poured down on the wooden floor of the front yard. A gentle breeze blew, and the wind chimes hanging under the eaves tinkled. Mika Kito and Suzaku knelt on the carpet, and a tea set was placed on the coffee table in front of them. Director Lin was wearing reading glasses, and there was a kind smile on his wrinkled face as he skillfully brewed tea. The aroma of the tea filled the air. Mika Kito took a sniff and slowly took a sip. He gently placed the purple clay teacup on the coffee table. He smiled and said in a deep voice, Director Lin, I'm here today to talk to you about my marriage with Wu Yu. Marriage. Director Lin placed the teapot back on the coffee table. Her gaze landed on Suzaku, and she looked puzzled. Wu Yu, you're going to marry Mr. Beitang. Is this true? Suzaku's lips curved upwards, and a faint smile bloomed on her face. Yes, we've decided to get married. Director Lin couldn't believe her ears. Although she didn't ask anything, she knew that Wu Yu seemed to be working under Mika Kito. She also knew that she and Wu Yu were controlled by Mika Kito. She didn't expect them to develop to this stage. Director Lin was silent for a moment, and looked at Mika Kito seriously. Mr. Beitang, I've always treated Wu Yu as my biological daughter. I hope that she can be happy. May I ask why you want to marry Wu Yu? Suzaku's gaze shifted, and she looked at the man beside her. His face was calm, and his lips were slightly pursed. She didn't want to put him in a difficult position. Because I'm pregnant. I love her. Both of them spoke at the same time. Principal Lin was suddenly shaken as he stared at the two of them in disbelief. The vermilion bird also stared at Beitang Shen in disbelief. However, it only lasted for 2 seconds before she retracted her gaze as a hint of sadness flashed past her eyes. She should know that he was only lying in order to make Principal Lin feel at ease. Director Lin's fingers trembled, and she held the edge of the coffee table tightly. She said slowly, Wu Yu, are you really pregnant? Yes. Suzaku's gaze was as calm as still water. Director Lin's lips trembled, and she wanted to say something, but in the end, she held herself back. Young people nowadays were no longer like old fogies like her. She sighed, and turned to look at Mika Kito. Mr. Beitang, if you really like Wu Yu, then I wish you all the best. Please take good care of Wu Yu. She's a very innocent girl. Please don't let her get hurt. Mika Kito placed his hands on his knees and bowed humbly. I won't let you down. I'll take good care of her. Okay. Director Lin's eyes were wet, and she looked at him with a gratified expression, nodding repeatedly. Suzaku was like a puppet, sitting quietly at the side with a tranquil smile, listening to Mika Kito and Director Lin discuss the time and style of the wedding. Mika Kito turned to look at her with a smile. Do you like Chinese, Japanese, or Western? She smiled. I'll listen to you. He thought for a while and said, How about Western? He considered that she didn't understand Japanese culture, and it would be difficult to hold a Japanese wedding. A Chinese wedding would also be very cumbersome, so a Western wedding would be simpler. She smiled. Okay. His gaze was extremely gentle. Make a list of friends you want to invite, and we'll personally write an invitation letter to them. Okay. As for the wedding gown, I plan to ask the chief designer in France to help you design it. You can tell me any details you want, and the designer will try his best to fulfill them. Okay. In this conversation, she said the word, okay, the most. Mika Kito and Director Lin both sensed that there was something wrong with her. Before they left, Director Lin took her hand and said something intimate. Wu Yu, tell me honestly, were you forced? Suzaku smiled brightly. Director, you're thinking too much. I agreed to marry him willingly. Then why do you seem a little strange? It's as if you don't care much about anything. Suzaku ran her fingers through her hair and lowered her eyes, looking a little shy. As long as I marry him, I don't care about anything. I see. Then I'm relieved. Director Lin was relieved. She patted the back of her hand and smiled from ear to ear. I think Mr. Beitang treats you quite well. You two are a good match. I'm happy for you. Previously, Director Lin was still a little worried. But after discussing the wedding with Mika Kito, she could tell that Mika Kito had feelings for Wu Yu. She also believed that he would treat Wu Yu well. On the way home, Suzaku turned her back to Mika Kito and looked out of the car window. I haven't seen Director Lin so happy in a long time. Even if it's just an act, I still have to thank you. Mika Kito glanced at her back. Try to trust me more in the future. I'm not acting. Suzaku wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. He had already told her frankly that he was marrying her for the sake of the child, but he still admitted that he loved her in front of Director Lin. If this wasn't an act, then what was? However, it didn't matter. When the news of their marriage spread to China, Xia Dong and the children were all shocked. Bailey Han, on the other hand, was overjoyed. He felt that his potential love rival had finally been defeated. To him, this was a good thing. The family packed their luggage and arrived in Japan a week in advance. They planned to take the opportunity to travel to Japan. It was their family's first trip. On the day they arrived at the airport, Mika Kito brought Suzaku to welcome them. Congratulations! Bailey Han smiled as he extended his hand and shook Mika Kito's hand. Mika Kito smiled. Thank you. Xia Dong hugged Suzaku and said with a smile, I really didn't expect you two to get together, but you two are really compatible. Suzaku, congratulations. Suzaku also hugged her and smiled. Thank you. Uncle Shin. The three children shouted happily as they pounced on Mika Kito. Suzaku watched as he was surrounded by the children with a bright smile on his face. During this time, he raised his head to look at Xia Dong and whispered something to her. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. She could clearly see that his eyes were still filled with love and adoration. Welfare, Hongcha 866. Chapter 379. Vermilion Bird envied the tacit understanding between the two of them. She also envied the feelings between the two of them. However, even though she was envious, she was not jealous of Xia Dong, who had always been hidden in the depths of her heart. She would not hurt him because of this, because to her, Xia Dong was also a very important friend. Before Xia Dong and Bailey Han came to Japan, they had already planned their daily schedule. The time they spent with Mika Kito and the rest was very short. They would leave early and return late every day, taking the children to play around. 2 days before the wedding, Tomac flew over from Italy and brought Holly's blessings. The blue sky was clear, the sun was rising, and the clear lake was sparkling. Next to the lake, there was a boundless lawn. All kinds of heart-shaped balloons were flying in the air, and cheerful music brought out a strong sense of jubilation. This was a grand lawn wedding. The venue was meticulously decorated. Guests in all kinds of gowns walked hand in hand, chatting and laughing with their acquaintances. The wedding would start in half an hour. In the bride's lounge, Suzaku was wearing a white wedding gown. She sat in front of the dressing mirror with mixed feelings. She almost couldn't recognize herself in the mirror. So there would be a day when she would wear a wedding gown and marry the man she loved. But why did she feel more sad than happy? She clenched her fists tightly. Her heart was beating very fast. There was a voice in her heart that kept telling her that he didn't love her. He only married her for the sake of the children and for the sake of responsibility. She couldn't let the mistake continue. She should return him his freedom. 10 minutes later. The door to the lounge was tightly shut. Mika Kito stood at the door. He was wearing a white wedding gown. The contours of his face were like a perfect work of art. His thin and sexy lips were slightly curved. His long and well-defined fingers were slightly bent as he knocked on the door. His voice was magnetic and had a subtle gentleness. Suzaku, it's almost time. Are you ready? There was silence. His eyes flashed and he increased his strength. Suzaku. There was still no answer. Break the door. he said to Jiang Dao behind him. The door was slammed open. There was no one in the room. The wedding dress was abandoned on the floor, and the veil was thrown on the windowsill. Mika Kito picked up the veil and held it tightly in her hand. The aura she exuded changed completely. Her natural domineering aura was tinged with fury. Her deep black eyes were like sharp blades, and she wanted to cut the woman into pieces. Jiang Dao informed his subordinates stationed at the wedding venue to track down Suzaku, while Mika Kito cancelled the wedding in front of all the guests. The guests were in an uproar. They whispered to each other and made all kinds of guesses. Mika Kito didn't care that he would become the laughingstock of the Japanese mafia. He didn't care about these people's probing or sympathetic gazes. The only thing he cared about was the woman who dared to run away from the marriage. He didn't understand why she had to run away. He had to catch her and ask her the reason. Brother Shen. Xia Dong walked to Mika Kito's side, not knowing how to comfort him. He said calmly, "I'm fine." He looked calm on the surface, but Xia Dong knew that he was extremely angry. If he caught Suzaku, she would be severely punished. Even she started to worry about Suzaku. But why did Suzaku run away from the marriage? Clearly, the two of them looked very happy. Bei Tang deeply thought that with his own power, he could easily find the whereabouts of the vermilion bird. Later on, he found out that he was wrong. The vermilion bird was really a ruthless woman. If she wanted, she could hide in a place where no one would be able to find her for the rest of their lives. It had been 3 years, and Mika Kito still didn't know where she was. He even started to wonder if this woman was still alive. Otherwise, why didn't she contact Director Lin or Ah Yuan for 3 years? Mika Kito would bring Ah Yuan to visit Director Lin every week. They seemed to be deliberately avoiding Suzaku and always talked about trivial things. On the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Director Lin drank 2 glasses of rice wine and was slightly drunk. She held Mika Kito's hand and murmured, "Shin, can you wait for another year?" "Okay." Mika Kito helped her to the bed to rest. She sighed. "If Wu Yu still doesn't want to come back after a year, don't wait for her anymore." Mika Kito didn't answer. He waved his hand and called the maid to take care of Director Lin. Outside the courtyard, the moonlight was cold, and the air was filled with the fragrance of osmanthus flowers. He stood in the garden and looked at the full moon in the sky. His finger gently rubbed the ring on his left hand. The diamond on the ring shone charmingly under the moonlight. On such a night, he couldn't help but wonder if she had kept their child. If she had given birth to the child should be able to run, jump, and call her mommy by now. In a small town in Hokkaido, the residents here basically relied on fishing and fish farming for a living. Every day, many boats went out to sea against the rising sun and returned with a full load under the sunset. The people here were simple and honest. The residents on the island all knew each other, and they warmly helped the outsiders. For example, in the largest flower shop on the island, the young lady boss took care of the shop alone with her 2-year-old child. The elderly neighbors often helped her take care of the child when she was busy. The flower shop was located in the busiest part of the street and was very close to a middle school. After school, a few girls liked to buy flowers from the shop and bring them home. In fact, buying flowers wasn't their main purpose. Their main purpose was to tease the lady bosses Xiao Bao. "Sister Wu Yu, we're here again." Led by Xiaoshuan, the girls carried their school bags and walked into the flower shop with smiles on their faces. Behind the counter stood a young woman in an apron. Her hair was combed into a bun on top of her head, and her neat bangs covered her smooth forehead. A pair of black-framed glasses rested on the bridge of her nose. She smiled and greeted the girls. "Hello, what flowers would you like to buy today?" A bright smile appeared on Xiaoshuan's delicate face. "Lilies. I'm going to give them to Mommy today." "Is that so? What a good girl." Wu Yu smiled and praised Xiaoshuan. Her fingers skillfully wrapped the bouquet. "Sister Wu Yu, where's Now? Why don't I see Now?" Chiba, who had already scanned the flower shop and didn't find the target person, came to the counter and asked eagerly. Wu Yu smiled apologetically. Now is tired from playing with Qiu Yi during the day. She's sleeping upstairs now. Chiba put her hands together and said pitifully, "Sister Wu Yu, I don't feel well after not seeing Now for a day. Can you let me go upstairs and take a peek? I swear I won't wake her up." "I also want to see." Xiaoshuan and the other girls also came up. Wu Yu laughed. All right, I really don't know what to do with you. Yeah, thank you, Sister Wu Yu. The girls ran upstairs excitedly. After taking 2 steps, they all lightened their steps and reminded each other not to wake Now up. Wu Yu looked at their backs and shook her head with a smile. On the 2nd floor of the flower shop was Wu Yu and Now's bedroom. Xiaoshuan gently opened the door of Now's bedroom. It was a beautiful and cozy children's room. Now was curled up in a small bed that was more than 1 meter long. He was sleeping soundly with his eyes closed. His little face was pink and chubby, like a cute big apple, which made people want to take a bite. His eyelashes were long and curly. He was a boy, but he had thick and dense eyelashes, which made the older girls envious. Xiaoshuan couldn't help but reach out and touch his smooth and tender little face. Chiba took out her phone and took a picture of Now's sleeping face. The girls didn't want to wake Now up, so they didn't stay for long. Soon, they went downstairs and paid the bill at the counter. They took the flowers and said goodbye to Wu Yu with a smile and skipped home. As Chiba walked, she looked at the pictures of Now saved on her phone and sighed. Now is so good-looking. I think his father must be very good-looking too. Xiaoshuan knocked on her forehead. Don't say such things in front of Sister Wu Yu. I heard that Sister Wu Yu's husband is dead. Don't remind her of sad things, okay? Aya, don't keep knocking on my forehead. I'm not a fool. Of course, I won't say such things in front of Sister Wu Yu. Haha, I'm sorry. I'm used to it and can't change it. Xiaoshuan, you're so annoying. The girls walked forward noisily, scattering their laughter all the way. October 21st was a very special day. 3 years ago, Mika Kito and Suzaku held their wedding on that day. Suzaku ran away from the wedding. Mika Kito thought for a long time and decided not to passively wait for her to appear. There were some things that he wanted to tell her. Mika Kito, who never appeared on television, participated in a talk show with high ratings on October 21st. As soon as the show started, he faced the camera and said slowly, "Honey, it's been 3 years. You should have had enough fun. Come back quickly. I miss you very much." The beautiful host was very excited and quickly asked, "Mr. Beitang, you never talk about your personal feelings in front of the media. Why did you suddenly change your mind today?" Mika Kito had a gentle smile on his face. Today is a very special day. 3 years ago today, my wife and I held our wedding. However, before the wedding, my wife abandoned me and ran away alone. The audience was in an uproar. The host did not expect such a shocking story and asked, "May I ask why your wife ran away from the wedding?" Mika Kito rubbed the ring on his ring finger and smiled. "I've been asking myself this question for a long time. It wasn't until recently that I figured it out. My wife thought that I didn't love her and that I married her out of responsibility. That's why she ran away and wanted to give me back my freedom. She was right. At that time, I did marry her out of responsibility." Beauty novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 380. The host asked curiously, "How do you feel about your wife now? Is there anything you want to say to her?" Mika Kito looked at the camera affectionately, as though he could see Suzaku's eyes through the lens. He said slowly, "Honey, I've sorted out my feelings. Can I love you now?" He was the leader of the underworld, the CEO of the Bo-Ao group, and a legendary figure who never appeared in the media. No one had expected him to confess to his wife in front of the entire country. At this moment, he was no longer domineering or aggressive. All that was left was his deep love for his wife, his desire for love, and his humility. Many people in the audience were moved by his words. The host also couldn't help but take the lead and applaud him. The applause was like a tidal wave, booming like thunder. After the audience quieted down, the host said, "Mr. Beitang, if your wife doesn't want to come back, will you continue to wait for her?" This question was the focus of everyone's attention. Mika Kito had already waited for Suzaku for 3 years. Was he still willing to wait for her? Everyone's eyes were on him, waiting for his answer. Mika Kito smiled and said calmly, "I won't wait for her anymore." The audience was in an uproar. Some people whispered to each other, obviously not satisfied with his answer. The host's expression changed, and he smiled awkwardly. "Can you tell me the reason?" Mika Kito ignored everyone's doubts. He looked deeply into the camera and said in a deep voice, "Honey, I don't care where you are in the world, and I don't care if you can hear what I'm saying today. I want to reiterate that I won't wait for you anymore. I'm going to look for you. Even if you're at the end of the world, I'll find you. You'll be my legal wife for 10 years or 20 years, and you'll never run away." The audience was stunned for a moment. Soon, thunderous applause broke out. "It's so touching, Mr. Beitang. You will definitely find your wife." The host stood up and applauded him with red eyes. Mika Kito also stood up. He faced the audience and the camera and said solemnly, "My wife is Wu Yulin. If anyone has any news about her, please contact my assistant at any time. I will reward the person who provides me with the information. I'm counting on everyone." With that, he placed his hands on the sides of his legs and bowed deeply to everyone. The host quickly said, "Regarding the contact information of Mr. Beitong's assistant and Mrs. Beitong's photo, please look at the bottom of the big screen. If you have any news about Mrs. Beitang, you can also contact the program team. I hope that with everyone's efforts, this pair of lovers can finally get married. Thank you for your support." News about Mika Kito was all over the country, and the video of his show was also widely circulated on the internet. Even the girls at school knew that he was looking for his wife who had left home for 3 years. Xiaoxuan held her phone and watched the video. She sighed with tears in her eyes. "Oh my God! I didn't expect the handsome Uncle Beitang to already have a wife. What a pity. Oh no. I mean, it's so touching." Chiba patted her shoulder. "Xiaoxuan, I think Uncle Beitang mentioned that his wife is Wu Yulin, right?" "Yes. There's a photo of her here." Xiaoxuan pointed at the small photo at the bottom of the video. "She's very pretty, but she looks cold." Chen Ye's delicate brows furrowed. "Little Soon, do you think the person Uncle Beitang is looking for is Sister Worryless?" "Sister Wu Yu?" Xiaoxuan widened her eyes and waved her hand. "That's impossible. Sister Wu Yu has a bright smile on her face every day. She's completely different from the cold beauty in the photo." Chiba scratched her head. "But I think they look a little alike." Xiaoxuan shook her head. "I still think it's impossible." After school, when the girls went to the flower shop to buy flowers, they were still whispering about this matter. From time to time, they would steal glances at Wu Yu, who was busy behind the counter. Xiaoxuan lowered her voice. "Chiba, if you don't give up, you can ask Sister Wu Yu." "Why me?" Chiba glared at her. "Idiot. Because you're curious, aren't you?" Xiaoxuan pulled her away from her friends and pushed her to the counter. She said loudly, "Sister Wu Yu, Chiba has something to ask you." Wu Yu turned around with a bouquet of flowers in her arms. She smiled and said, "What do you want to ask me?" Chiba was almost angered to death by Xiaoxuan. She frowned in annoyance and hesitated, not knowing what to say. Wu Yu looked at her gently. "Chiba, what's the matter?" Chiba shook her head frantically. "No, nothing." "Sister Wu Yu, do you know the CEO of Boa Corporation, Mika Kito?" Wu Yu's smile did not change. "I don't know him." "What's the matter?" Chiba heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she felt a little disappointed. Xiaoxuan patted Chiba's shoulder. "See, I told you that Sister Wu Yu is the person Uncle Beitang is looking for." Wu Yu asked quizzically, "What are you talking about? Why can't I understand?" "It's like this. The CEO of Boa Corporation, Mika Kito, participated in a talk show. He said on the show that he wanted to find his wife." Xiaoxuan put her hands together and told Wu Yu what Mika Kito said on the show with tears in her eyes. "How was it, Sister Wu Yu? Wasn't it very touching?" The little girl blinked her beautiful eyes and looked at her eagerly. Wu Yu smiled. "Yes, it was very touching." When Chiba found out that Wu Yu was not the person Mika Kito was looking for, she was worried that she would be reminded of her sad past, so she quickly interrupted. "Sister Wu Yu, where's now? He went out to play with Akino. The little rascal is so clingy." Wu Yu's smile was full of affection. "Mommy, I'm back." A soft child's voice suddenly came from the door. Now is back." Xiaoxuan and Chiba shouted happily as they rushed to the door. Soon, they walked into the flower shop, each holding a little girl's hand. The chubby little boy had a bright smile on his face. He raised his little head and looked innocently at Worryless behind the counter with his big, watery eyes. His voice was soft and coquettish as he said, "Mommy, I'm not a brat. I'm a good baby. Now, it's useless to act like a spoiled child. You're just a disobedient little rascal." Wu Yu took off her gloves and came out from behind the counter. She rubbed her son's face and asked, "Where's Uncle Aquino?" "Uncle Aquino is outside." The little boy turned around and pointed outside the flower shop. Now, play with your sisters. Mommy will go out for a while." Wu Yu patted her son's head and entrusted her son to Xiaoshuan and Chiba. On the street outside the flower shop, a young policeman was holding a bicycle and chatting with an old lady. This policeman was Aquino Asakura. He was the town's patrol officer and was very kind and cheerful. He was very loved by the town's residents. The old lady was Wu Yu's neighbor and often helped her take care of Now. She made delicious food and liked to give it to them. Wu Yu and Now both liked this kind old lady. Wu Yu smiled and greeted them. "Auntie Kimura. Officer Aquino." When Aquino saw her, a bright smile appeared on his face. "Hello, Miss Wu Yu." "Wu Yu, you're here." Mrs. Kimura smiled. "You guys have a chat. I still have some soup at home. I'll go back first. Aquino, don't forget what I told you." Aquino smiled and waved his hand. "I definitely won't forget. I've already remembered it in my heart." Mrs. Kimura left, satisfied. Wu Yu pointed at her flower shop. "Do you want to go in and have a seat?" Aquino adjusted the hat on his head. "It's okay. I still have something to do. Mrs. Kimura asked me to help her find her cat." Wu Yu pursed her lips and smiled. "Thank you, Officer Aquino. Did Now give you any trouble today?" "No, the little guy was very obedient today." Aquino's young and handsome face smiled gently. "How about you? Did you have a good day?" "Yes, business is good and I'm in a good mood. Anyway, thank you for taking care of Now for me." Wu Yu smiled and patted his shoulder. "When you're on vacation this weekend, I'll treat you to good food." He shrugged. "Sure, but I prefer you to cook for me." She smiled and raised her eyebrows. "Don't push your luck." He laughed heartily. In the evening, Wu Yu closed the shop. She carried Now in one hand and carried the vegetables she had bought from the market in the other. She walked upstairs. "Mommy, I want to eat braised fish today." Now hugged her neck and said in a baby voice. Wu Yu kissed his tender little face and smiled. "Okay, Mommy will help the little gluttonous cat cook fish." After dinner, she sat on the sofa with her son in her arms and taught him to speak Chinese. Although she lived in Japan, she had never forgotten that she was from China. Her son had to learn Chinese and Chinese characters. After tutoring her son for more than an hour, she bathed him, told him stories and coaxed him to sleep. When she was done, it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening. Wu Yu glanced at his watch, took off the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and took the laptop on the table over. She turned on her computer and typed in Bai Tang Shen's name in the search box. News about him flooded out in an overwhelming manner. The latest and most popular news was that he had participated in a television program to find his wife's whereabouts in front of the entire nation. Every word he said struck deep into her heart, especially the part where he said, "My heart has been sorted out," which made her heart tremble. She clenched her fists and stared at his handsome face. For the past 3 years, she thought that she could forget him, but Now's existence kept reminding her that her son had a father. She was still thinking about her son's father. Damn it. Her gaze slowly moved from his face to his left hand. He was wearing a diamond ring on his ring finger. She raised her left hand. There was a ring of the same design on her ring finger. Her nose felt like it was choking on chili. It was unbearably spicy and her eyes sparkled. At Hongcha 866. Chapter 381. The sun shone warmly on the window. A woman in a white sweater and a long woolen dress stood among the flowers. She had a gentle smile on her lips and her eyes were slightly downcast as she quietly tended to the flowers in her hands. Outside the window, a tall man in a black suit had been standing there for a long time. His handsome face was expressionless as his deep eyes stared intently at the woman standing in the flower shop. It was her. It was really her. The woman who had made him yearn for her for thousands of days and nights. Ding dong. The wind chime at the door made a crisp and pleasant sound. A pair of slender legs stepped through the door. Wu smiled and looked up. "Welcome." The next second, the smile on her face froze. At the door stood a tall and handsome man. Because of the light, his face was dark and gloomy, but his body exuded an aura of disdain. His pitch-black eyes stared intently at her as if he wanted to see through her organs and penetrate deep into her bones. She pursed her lips and quietly met his gaze. The two of them looked at each other like this, as if they wanted to engrave each other deeply in their minds. "Mommy." A soft child's voice came from the stairs. Now was wearing Pikachu pajamas. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and shook his little butt as he slowly walked down the stairs. Wu eyes flashed with panic. She quickly turned around, intending to hide her son. However, Mika Kito was faster than her. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his arms, hugging her tightly. His hot breath sprayed on her earlobes. She squirmed uneasily, lowered her voice and said hurriedly, "Let go of me. Now is coming down. If there's anything, let's talk outside." His arm was firmly pressed on her waist. His eyes were fixed on the little ball of meat that appeared on the stairs. His voice was low and dangerous. "No, I want to let my son know about our relationship now. I'm begging you. Let go." Her voice was anxious and flustered. The fake calmness on her face had been torn apart, and a pleading expression emerged. His cold heart actually softened the moment he heard her soft pleading. He slowly let go of her hand and she was like a panicked little rabbit, immediately jumping out of his arms. She quickly adjusted her facial expression and smiled at their son who was approaching them. Now, you're awake?" "Mommy, who's that strange uncle?" Now swayed his little but as he walked down the last step. He tilted his head curiously and looked at Mika Kito behind her. "He's Mommy's friend." Wu stroked the hair by her ear and pursed her lips. His handsome face was full of gentleness. He held now. And handsome now. Yes. Now nodded vigorously. He puffed up his pink cheeks and muttered, "Mommy likes to call me now. Actually, my name is now." Mika Kito tried hard to control the urge to pull now into his arms. He smiled even more gently. Now. What a cute name." The little boy's eyes sparkled. He said unhappily, "You can't call me now. Only Mommy can call me now." Mika Kito's eyes were full of smiles. He rubbed his soft hair dotingly. "If I were your daddy, would I call you now?" The little boy tilted his head. His beautiful big eyes were full of curiosity. "But I don't have a daddy." "Uncle, you're so strange. Don't have a daddy." The little boy's innocent words were like a hammer that struck Mika Kito's heart hard. He suddenly turned his head and glanced dangerously at Wu, who lowered her head and pretended to be innocent. Mika Kito picked now up from the ground. He stared into his clear eyes and smiled gently. Now, I'll be your daddy, okay?" Now shook his head. "No. I like a Kiko. I want a Kiko to be my daddy." "A Kiko?" That damned woman. She actually hooked up with another man. Mika Kito was furious. He wanted to drag her and his son home right now. "Uncle, you look terrible. It's so scary." The little boy tugged at his clothes and shrunk his neck. However, he didn't show any fear on his face. His bright eyes shone with a sly light. What a mischievous little boy. Mika Kito's heart softened and his anger dissipated. He kissed him on the cheek. Now. Watch carefully. I'll definitely be your daddy." Now wiped his little face in disgust and pouted. "You can't kiss me. Only Mommy can kiss me." "You can't make me now either." Mika Kito was amused by this cute little boy. He laughed heartily. This was the first time in 3 years that he laughed so happily. Now was very active. He ran wildly upstairs and downstairs. He was like an active pony that couldn't stop for a moment. One moment, he ran to his grandmother's house next door to play with the little cat. The next moment, he led his car to a fish stall and squatted in front of it. He muttered, braised fish. It wasn't until Mika Kito bought him a big fish that he held in his hand that he followed him home with Gigai. Mika Kito understood why Suzaku named their son Now. He must have been very noisy when he was just born. She had to take care of her son alone and take care of the flower shop. When Mika Kito thought about how hard it was for Suzaku, he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Soon, it was night time. Mika Kito sat on the sofa with his son in his arms. His thoughts were all on Suzaku. She was wearing an apron and preparing dinner in the kitchen. She stood gracefully in front of the kitchen counter. Her movements were skillful and her expression was gentle. 3 years had not left many traces on her. On the contrary, she had become more charming. After being sculpted by time, her entire body radiated an irresistible charm. Now, wash your hands and eat. There's your favorite braised fish. Suzaku's cheerful voice came from the kitchen. Mika Kito smiled and rubbed his son's hair. Now, wash your hands and eat. Don't call me now. Now glared at him unhappily. He slid down the sofa from his arms and ran to the bathroom to wash his hands. Mika Kito was worried about him and followed him. When he entered the bathroom, he saw the little boy standing on a small stool. He put his little hands under the faucet and carefully washed his little hands. His serious look was extremely adorable, causing a strong sense of pride to rise in Beitang Shen's heart. He had a son, an obedient and smart son. He lifted Now from the stool and kissed him hard on the cheek. Uncle, you're so strange. Why do you always kiss me? If you kiss me again, I'll get angry. I'll really get angry. The little boy frowned and stared at him with puffed cheeks. Where did this strange uncle come from? Did he really not forget to take his medicine? Silly boy, I'm your daddy. Mika Kito laughed in a low voice. Now curled his lips in disdain. Tesuke, don't lie to me. Mommy said that I don't have a daddy. I'll get even with your mommy later. Humph. Mika Kito rubbed his head. Let's go eat. After 3 years, they were once again sitting around the same table to eat. Beitang Shen looked at Zhu Kei, who was sitting across from him. She was seriously helping Now remove the fish bones. He suddenly had an illusion that she had never left and had only gone to the supermarket to buy his and his son's favorite food, that's all. Now didn't like to eat vegetables. He always secretly threw vegetables under the table when his mommy wasn't looking. He secretly glanced at Suzaku, who was carefully removing fish bones, and quietly poked the vegetables from the plate to the table with his chopsticks. Suzaku suddenly looked up at him and said sternly, Now, you can't just eat meat and not vegetables. Eat the carrots and green peppers. But I don't like it. Now pouted sadly. His big eyes were filled with tears and he looked very pitiful. Mika Kito couldn't help but feel sorry for her son. She said, It's okay if the child doesn't like it. Don't force him. Suzaku threatened him with her eyes and motioned for him to stop talking. Then she stared at Now and said, Now, vegetables can replenish your body's vitamins. If you want to grow taller, you have to eat vegetables in Gigai. Do you understand? Okay. Now mumbled unwillingly. He picked up the vegetables with his children's chopsticks, frowned, and swallowed them painfully as if he was taking medicine. Mika Kito's eyes were full of love. She stroked her son's little head and said softly, Now, do you know why rabbits like to eat carrots? Now asked curiously, Why? Because rabbits can run fast after eating carrots. Do you want to run as fast as a rabbit? Then you can catch up with Grandma Kimura's little tabby cat, Mika Kito said patiently. Now thought about it seriously and nodded firmly. I want to eat carrots too. Good boy. Here, eat up all these carrots. Mika Kito gave him some carrots with her chopsticks and encouraged him with a smile. Higigai finished the carrots and poked the green peppers on the plate with his chopsticks. He tilted his head and asked, Where's the green peppers? Why do you want to eat green peppers? Mika Kito's eyes moved and she chuckled. Eating more green peppers can make you a strong little man. Then you can help mommy work and she won't have to work so hard, okay? Yes, I want to become a man. The little boy was fooled by her words and happily ate the green peppers. Suzaku was speechless. Eat more green peppers and become a strong little man? Was she bullying the child because he hadn't watched Popeye's cartoon? After dinner, Mika Kito took over Suzaku's job and taught Now Chinese. Looking at the father and son happily sitting on the sofa, Suzaku, who was cutting fruit in the kitchen, couldn't help but smile. It wasn't the first time Mika Kito bathed a child. He had bathed Xiaobao before, But Xiao Bao wasn't as naughty as Now Now. Now Now sat in the bathtub and played with the duckling, splashing water everywhere. When he walked out of the bathroom with Now Now in his arms, he was soaked. Beauty novel, Song Shu 566. Chapter 382. Suzaku gave him a towel and took Now Now from his arms. Go and wash up. I'll take Now Now to bed, she said softly. Her son was lying on the bed, extremely excited. He made a racket for a long time until Vermilion Bird put on a stern face and told him to make a fuss. Only then did he quiet down and obediently close his eyes to sleep. Coming out of her son's room, Vermilion Bird happened to bump into Beitang Shen, who had just finished bathing. His upper body was naked, and there was a white bath towel around his waist. His hair was wet, and the water droplets slid down his hair, sliding over his strong chest and strong waist, disappearing into the mysterious place covered by the bath towel. Her face was slightly hot and she looked away uncomfortably. He strode over to her and lifted her chin with his right hand. Wifey, it's time for us to have a good talk. Her face heated up even more. She bit her lip and said softly, I'm not your wifey. Don't call me that. She put her hands behind her back and secretly took off the ring on her ring finger and held it tightly in her palm. Mika Kito's eyes flickered and his smile deepened. He suddenly pulled her left hand out from behind her back and pried her slender fingers apart. He used his fingers to caress her ring finger and chuckled happily. This white mark was left behind by the ring, right? It seems like you've been wearing it for a long time. How long? 3 years. Her eyes flickered and she bit her lip tightly and remained silent. He suddenly pulled out her right hand that was hidden behind her back. She clenched her right hand into a tight fist and refused to let go. He smiled mischievously. What are you hiding in your palm? Is it the ring? The moment he reunited with her, he had already scanned her entire body like a radar. Of course, he knew that she was wearing their wedding ring. She secretly took off her wedding ring. This little trick couldn't escape his eyes. Suzaku looked at his mischievous gaze angrily. Yes, I'm hiding a ring in my palm. Are you happy now? She grabbed his hand and stuffed the ring into his palm. I'll return it to you now. We don't owe each other anything in the future. You can leave now, she said angrily. Mika Kito didn't get angry. Instead, he chuckled softly. He held her finger and wanted to put the ring back on her finger. We already have a child. How can you say that we don't owe each other anything? Wifey, stop playing and come home with me. The ring slowly slipped onto her finger. She lowered her eyes and looked at the beautiful ring. She said indifferently, How did you find me? Mika Kito took out his phone and showed her a photo. This photo was posted on the forum by a female junior high student named Little Soon. The post said that the lady boss of the flower shop is very gentle and beautiful. The boss's daughter, Xiao Bao, is very cute. Suzaku looked up at the photo. It was a side profile photo of her carrying Now Now in the flower shop. Both mother and son were smiling happily. It seemed that Little Soon had secretly taken the photo from outside the window. In the photo, she was wearing black-rimmed glasses and her neat fringe covered her forehead. She looked like a completely different person from before. She didn't expect him to recognize her. He chuckled. I spent a lot of effort to find you. I have to say that you're very good at hiding yourself. Thank you for your compliment, she said mildly. He took a step forward and pulled her into his arms. He stroked her hair and said softly, I'm not here to compliment you. I'm here to take you home. Honey, come home with me. Her face was directly pressed against his moist and naked chest. She couldn't help but tremble. After a moment of silence she said, No, I like my current life. His eyes narrowed dangerously. Do you like your current life or do you like Akiko? He was jealous when he heard from his son that Akiko had the ambition to become his son's daddy. She pursed her lips. Akiko is just my friend. Even now, she still didn't want to be misunderstood by him. He hugged her even tighter. His hard chest was pressed against her softness. His tone was unbelievably gentle. You like flowers. When we return to Tokyo, I'll get someone to plant the entire garden. Come back with me, okay? It's not about the flowers. Suzaku pushed his chest. The two of them were pressed against each other, making her feel pressured and threatened. Then what's the problem? His purpose of coming here was to bring her and their child home. No matter what problems they encountered, they had to solve them one by one. She looked up at him. I like this kind of peaceful life. Here my heart is peaceful. When we return to Tokyo, you can also live a peaceful life. You're just my wife and now's mommy. You don't have to worry about anything else. He held her face and tried to persuade her. Her lips curved into a cold smile and she shook her head. No, when we return to Tokyo, I'll want more. If I can't get it, I'll be very sad. Here I won't want those things, so I won't be sad. He stared into her eyes. I can give you whatever you want. She pointed her finger at his heart and looked at him provocatively. What if what I want is your heart? My heart is already yours. Without hesitation, he held her finger and placed it on his chest. His mesmerizing eyes gazed at her face as he said in a deep voice. Do you feel it? It's beating faster because of you. Thump. Thump. His heart was beating very hard and fast. The chest under her palm was like a flame, burning her finger. She retracted her finger uneasily. Why? Is it because of now that you want to bring me back? No. He held her shoulders agitatedly. Silly, I've already fallen in love with you. It's because I love you that I want to be with you. It's not because of now or because of responsibility. What do I have to do to make you believe me? Her tears streamed down her face. She rarely cried. Even when giving birth was so painful, she had never cried. She thought that she would never hear him say that word again in her life. She bit her lip and cried quietly. She didn't sob or complain. She just cried quietly, but it made Mika Kito's heart ache. He hurriedly wiped her tears and comforted her gently. Don't cry. Be good. The vermilion bird gradually stopped crying and withdrew from his embrace. She said in a low voice, Give me some time, let me think about it. Rome wasn't built in a day. They needed to sort out their emotional entanglements and it wasn't something that could be resolved in a short period of time. Mika Kito understood this, so he didn't want to force her. Otherwise, it would only drive her further away from him. He smiled. Okay, I'll give you some time to think. But while you're thinking, I want to stay with you. This was the only way he could feel at ease. She rejected him without hesitation. No. If you stay here, it will cause gossip. He raised his eyebrows domineeringly. We're husband and wife. What's wrong with staying together? If they want to gossip, let them. She glared at him. Correction, we're not husband and wife yet. How are we not husband and wife? Although we didn't hold a wedding, we've already registered our marriage. She explained, there was too little time at the time. The China embassy in Japan didn't have time to issue a certificate of marriage. We didn't complete the marriage procedures. He smiled smugly. After you ran away from the wedding, I've already taken care of it. So, we're now legally husband and wife. Fine. She lost to him. He stroked her hair. So we can rest now. She blushed and slapped his hand away. You'll sleep on the sofa tonight. Mika Kito glanced at the sofa in the living room and smiled bitterly. Can you really bear to let me curl up in such a small space? She grunted. If you don't want to, you can stay in a hotel. There's a very comfortable hotel 50 meters from here. He said seriously, I suddenly realized that sleeping on the sofa is pretty good. It's very soft. Wait a minute. I'll go get the quilt and pillow. She turned and walked to her bedroom. The corners of her lips curled up. Mika Kito curled up on the sofa miserably. He tossed and turned for a long time, unable to fall asleep. Sigh. What was this? The warm and fragrant woman was less than 10 meters away, but he was curled up on the small sofa and hugging the quilt to sleep alone. Around midnight, Now staggered out of the children's room. He jumped on the ground, and the voice-activated lights on the living room wall immediately lit up. Mika Kito woke up in a daze. She looked up alertly and saw Now walking toward the bathroom in a daze. Now, what are you doing? Mika Kito got down from the sofa and followed behind her son. Now seemed to be startled by him. His little body suddenly trembled twice, and he turned around stiffly. His sleepy eyes were completely opened, and he pouted his little mouth, as if he was about to cry. Don't be afraid. It's me. Now, be a good boy. Don't cry. Mika Kito didn't expect to scare her son. She felt guilty and quickly squatted down to comfort him. Tears were about to flow out of his eyes, but the little guy didn't cry out loud. He said sadly, "Uncle, you scared me." "It's okay. It's okay. Don't be afraid." Mika Kito stroked his thin back and said softly, "Do you want to go to the bathroom?" Now pouted and nodded. "Uncle will help you." Mika Kito picked him up and walked into the bathroom to help him pee. He twisted his little body and said embarrassedly, "I can pee on my own. Put me down." "Are you sure?" "Yes." Mika Kito put him down. He dragged the stool to the toilet, climbed up, and spread his legs. Before he took off his pants, he turned back to warn Mika Kito, "Uncle, I want to pee. Turn around. Don't peek." Beitang Shen raised his eyebrows in amusement. Sure enough, he turned around and didn't look at him. The sound of water splashing came from the toilet. After the little guy finished peeing, he washed his hands and flushed the toilet. It was hard to imagine that Suzaku had raised her son to be so independent and sensible. He was so sensible that it made his heart ache. Come and see. Song Shu 566. Chapter 383. The wind chimes rang and the glass door of the flower shop was pushed open. "Hi, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, what flowers would you like to buy?" A handsome man in an apron greeted the customers with a smile as he held a pot of flowers. "Ah, you're so handsome. Uncle, are you the helper that Sister Wu Yu hired?" The female junior high school students shrieked excitedly with hearts in their eyes. "Yes, I'm a new employee. Please take care of me." Mika Kito's handsome face had a warm smile without a trace of displeasure. Why do I feel that Uncle looks a little familiar?" Xiaoshuan rubbed her nose and searched carefully in her mind. "Ah!" Chiba exclaimed as she pointed at Beitang Shen and said excitedly, "Xiaoshuan, I remember now. This is Uncle Beitang, the one who posted the notice on TV, looking for his wife." The girls were so excited that they were about to go crazy. They rushed forward and asked all at once, "Uncle, are you really Mika Kito?" "Uncle, is Sister Wu Yu the person you're looking for?" "Uncle, is now your son?" "Uncle, Uncle." Beitang Shen had a faint smile on his face. After waiting for them to ask questions, he slowly said, "That's right, I am Beitang Shen. The Sister Wu Yu you speak of is my wife. Now is also my son." "Ah, oh my God, Xiaoshuan, pinch me. I'm so excited that I'm about to faint." Sob. "I didn't expect Uncle Beitang to be even more handsome in person than on TV. Sister Wu Yu is so lucky. Now that I look closer, now looks a lot like Uncle Beitang." The girls finally suppressed their excitement. Chiba asked curiously, "Uncle, why are you here alone? Where's Sister Wu Yu and now?" "Who said he's alone? You love-struck idiots just didn't see us." Suzaku came out from behind a tall and lush potted plant. She was wearing an apron and holding a pair of scissors in her hand. It seemed that she was repairing the potted plant. At her feet squatted Xiao Now. The little fellow held her head with both hands and smiled slyly. Xiaoshuan covered her mouth and giggled. "Sister Wu Yu, I'm sorry. We were just too surprised." "That's right, big Sister Wu Yu. I didn't expect you to really be Uncle's wife. You lied to us the last time we asked you." Qian Yi stuck out her tongue mischievously with a hint of complaint in her voice. Suzaku smiled. "You kids don't understand adult matters." She didn't seem to want to stay on this topic any longer. She lowered her head and carefully trimmed the potted plants. The girls were a little embarrassed and didn't know what to say to ease the suddenly stiff atmosphere. Now stuck his tongue out mischievously at them and rushed to Mika Kito's side like a little cannonball. He hugged his slender legs and raised his little head to ask, "Uncle, are you really my daddy?" "Yes. I told you from the beginning that I'm your daddy. I didn't lie to you, did I?" Mika Kito picked him up and pinched his pink cheeks. He said with a doting expression, "Good boy, call me daddy." Now tilted his head and thought for a moment. Suddenly, he shook his head and pouted. "No. I'll only call you that if Mommy wants me to." Mika Kito was helpless. He glanced at the girls who were staring at him and smiled bitterly. Look, your big sister Wu Yu still doesn't want to accept me. You have to help me put in a few good words in front of her. The girls secretly glanced at Suzaku, who was busying herself behind the potted plants, and secretly made an okay gesture. Xiaoshuan whispered, Uncle, girls like romance. You should do something romantic to make big sister Wu Yu happy. Maybe she'll accept you if she's happy. That's right, Uncle. I have a book here that I can lend to you. One of the girls secretly took out a comic book called The Story of Love from her bag and whispered. This is a comic about love that the popular manga artist, Sensei Kyeko, specially drew for boys and girls. It sells very well. Okay, I'll take a good look at it. Mika Kito cooperatively lowered his voice and hid the comic book under his clothes. Now blinked his beautiful big eyes and moved his red lips, as if he was going to reveal their secret. Xiaoshuan quickly covered his mouth and winked at him. Now, you're the best. Don't tell anyone about our little secret, including your mommy. Got it? Now nodded confusedly. Now is such a good boy. Big sister will treat you to candy. Chiba immediately stuffed a piece of chocolate into Now's mouth when Xiaoshuan withdrew her hand. Xiaoshuan deliberately raised her voice and said cheerfully, Uncle, I want to buy lilies. Please bandage them for me. Uncle, I want to buy yellow roses and baby's breath. Uncle, I want to buy. The children were trying to hide something and deliberately shouted loudly. Okay, please wait a moment. Mika Kito's smile widened. He began to understand why Suzaku didn't want to leave this place. The people here were kind and simple. She had formed a bond with them and couldn't bear to leave. Mika Kito had been staying at Suzaku's place for 3 days. It was impossible for him to eat and sleep with her every day. He still curled up on the sofa miserably every night. He helped her take care of her business, and she greeted the customers without putting on any airs. She warmly chatted with the customers and neighbors, enthusiastically promoting his ownership. Almost everyone in the town knew that he was Wu You's husband, causing Chiu Yi, who had a crush on Vermilion Bird, to be depressed for several days. Their relationship had died before it could blossom. Regarding this, Bei Tangshen was very gratified. The weeds and trees surrounding his wife were finally cleared. The day was over. Suzaku mercilessly pushed Mika Kito out of her bedroom. She smiled and said, Good night. Mika Kito curled up on the soft sofa. He couldn't let this go on. God knows how long his little woman would throw a tantrum. He had to speed up and make Gigai surrender. Vermilion Bird was lying on the bed. Thinking of a certain someone's deflated expression when he was pushed out of the door, she felt full of joy, and the corners of her lips rose high. She planned to observe him for a few more days. If he passed the assessment, she would follow the steps he gave her. The crisp ringtone of her mobile phone interrupted her wild thoughts. Zhu Kei glanced at the caller ID and put the phone to her ear to answer. Hongling, what's the matter? Sister Suzaku, we found Harada's whereabouts. That guy is too cunning. Qing Yan and I have tried to catch him twice but failed. So, we have to ask you to do it yourself. Suzaku frowned. Where is Harada now? In downtown Sapporo. Qing Yan is monitoring his hiding place. We're waiting for you so that we can catch him in one fell swoop. Come and see. Hongcha 866. Chapter 384. Suzaku thought for a moment and said, I can't get out now. Mika Kito is with me. What? He found you? Damn. Didn't the Miyagi police say that they would help you cover up your whereabouts? How can the Metropolitan Police Department be so unreliable? Don't get too worked up, Hongling. Red Sparrow massaged her temples and sighed. You can't blame Miyagi for this. It's not easy for him to cover for me for 3 years. Anyway, I can't come out now. Why don't you let Miyagi and the others take care of Harada? Hongling shouted excitedly. No, Harada Yushur is worth 5 million. If we get that reward, how many orphans can we help? I don't want to give up such a good opportunity to the Metropolitan Police Department. Suzaku, please think of another way, please. Okay, I'll give it a try. Wait for my news. After hanging up the phone, Suzaku looked at her watch. It was only 10 o'clock. If she went to downtown Sapporo now, She would be back in town by 12 o'clock at the latest. Mika Kito shouldn't be able to detect her presence. She walked out of the bedroom, turned on the wall lamp in the living room, and deliberately made her footsteps heavy. She walked to the kitchen, vigilantly watching Mika Kito lying on the sofa. Mika Kito didn't move from the moment she entered the kitchen until she heated up a glass of milk and brought it back to the room. She thought that he should be asleep. Suzaku changed into her night clothes, took out a car key from the bedside table, put it in her trouser pocket, and quietly walked out the door. The moment she locked the door, Mika Kito suddenly opened his eyes. His dark jade-like pupils stared at the locked door. It was late at night. The street was dark, the street was dim, and there was no one. A Porsche sports car slowly drove out of the underground garage and sped away under the cover of the night. Mika Kito stood at the intersection, looking in the direction where the Porsche disappeared. His face was cold and terrifying. Damn woman, how much more is she hiding from me? A Maybach drove out from another street and stopped in front of Mika Kito. Jiang Dao unlocked the car door. Mika Kito quickly got into the back seat and ordered, "Follow her." Yes. When Suzaku arrived in Sapporo, it was already 12 o'clock in the morning. Some streets were deserted, while others were the busiest. She used the car phone to contact Hongling and learn their exact location. They drove through the downtown area for a while, and finally turned into a secluded street. She wandered around for nearly 10 minutes before she arrived at her destination. Calm as far as she knew, this was the black market of Sapporo, where crooks mixed with honest folk. Violent attacks often occurred here, and even the police were not willing to deal with this place, for fear of provoking the forces of the mafia. No wonder Harada was hiding in this place. The Porsche stopped in an open space. Suzaku was wearing a tight black suit. Her hair was tied up high, and her beautiful face was as cold as ice. The ruthless killer Suzaku was resurrected at this moment. "Sister Suzaku." Two black figures quickly ran to her side. One was a man, and the other was a woman. Both of them were in their 20s. They were wearing black night clothes with pistols and handcuffs hidden at their waists. "Let's go. Be careful. Don't alarm others." Suzaku lowered her voice and waved at them. Harada Yasushi was a perverted murderer. He had raped and killed 7 women and buried their bodies under his garden. After the crime, he fled from Tokyo to Hokkaido. Suzaku and the other 2 were bounty hunters. They specialized in capturing wanted criminals for high bounties. Usually, Qing Yen and Hong Ling were the ones who took action. They only asked Suzaku for help when they encountered more difficult fugitives and couldn't handle them. The 3 of them split up and planned to surround Harada Yasushi, capture him alive, and send him to the police station. Suzaku's right hand was on the pistol at her waist. She walked in the dark alley with high vigilance. From time to time, she could hear the meowing of stray cats and the sound of drug addicts trading. She walked to the deepest part of the alley and hid behind a wall. If Harada Yasushi wanted to escape, this was one of the places he had to go. Hong Ling was waiting for him at the other place. Panicked and hurried footsteps sounded on the empty stone road. A strong man in his 30s held a gun in his hand, shooting behind him as he fled in panic. Suzaku jumped down from the wall and kicked the gun out of the man's hand. She twisted the man's hands behind his back and pressed him heavily on the ground. The man shouted in panic, "Spare me! I don't know anything. I don't know anything." Suzaku's eyes narrowed. She turned his face around. This face was different from the one on the wanted poster. They had the wrong person. This wasn't Harada Yasushi. She said coldly, "Where's Harada Yasushi?" I don't know. A man gave me a sum of money and told me to run in this direction. Damn it, I fell for Harada's trick of luring me away." Suzaku kicked him away and said to Qing Yen, who was chasing after them, "This isn't Harada. He must have gone in Hong Ling's direction. Quick, let's go." On their way to Hong Ling's side, a gunshot suddenly rang out in the silent night. Zhu Kei's pupils suddenly constricted, and a wave of uneasiness surged in her heart. She quickened her pace and rushed forward. Under the dim light, the 2 figures grappled with each other. Their pistols had been tossed far away, so they could only engage in hand-to-hand combat. Hong Ling was good at kung fu, but Yuan Tian was not bad either. The 2 of them fought fiercely. Suzaku ran forward and kicked Harada's leg. She then pointed the gun at his temple and said coldly, "Let her go." Harada glared at Suzaku. His face was twisted with hatred. Finally, he let go of Hong Ling under her coercion. Hong Ling held her knees with both hands and panted heavily. Damn it, Harada Yasushi's grip was too strong. He almost broke her neck. Cuff him, Suzaku said coldly. Qing Yen took out a pair of handcuffs from her back and cuffed Harada's wrists. The three of them walked out of the alley with Harada in tow. After walking for less than 10 meters, they saw a man in a black suit standing under a street lamp. He was tall and muscular like a statue. He stood straight and stared at them coldly without any expression on his face. Suzaku's heart skipped a beat. It was Mika Kito. Hong Ling frowned. Sister Suzaku, that person seems to be. Shoo, stop talking. Sister Suzaku, let's take Harada to the police station first. Qing Yen saw that Suzaku's expression had darkened. She immediately called Hong Ling and left with Harada. Suzaku pursed her lips and walked towards Mika Kito. Under the light, his handsome face was cold. She leaned closer to him and said softly, I'm sorry for hiding it from you. Mika Kito's thin lips curved into a cold smile. She suppressed the anger in her voice. Have you been like this for the past 3 years? She had been with him for so long. Of course, she knew that he was on the verge of exploding. The stupidest thing to do was to go against him, and the smartest thing to do was to show weakness. She took a step forward and hugged his waist slowly. She leaned her head on his chest and said softly, I was wrong. I apologize. Mika Kito froze. Although they already had a child, they rarely had physical contact, especially when she took the initiative to get close to him. It seemed like this was the first time. The time when he was under the influence of the aphrodisiac didn't count because he wasn't conscious. He lowered his eyes and looked at the woman in his arms. She was so gentle and pitiful. She was completely different from the cold and aloof person he used to know. It was as if a basin of cold water had been poured over his head, extinguishing most of the anger in his heart. He wrapped his arms around her waist and hugged her tightly. He said in a deep voice, Don't do such a dangerous thing again. She raised her head and looked at him, her eyes filled with smiles. Got it. I won't do it again. Although he had already received her guarantee, Mika Kito was still a little unhappy. Just thinking about how she had put herself in danger for the past 3 years made him feel like he was about to go crazy. He pulled her into his car with a dark face and sat in the driver's seat. He chased Jiang Dao into Suzaku's car and ordered Jiang Dao to drive her Porsche back to town and take care of his precious son. Wait a minute. Suzaku grabbed his arm and asked in confusion, Aren't we going back together? He grunted and ignored her. He stepped on the accelerator and drove the car onto the main road. The car drove on the busy street for a while and finally stopped outside a 5-star hotel. Mika Kito threw the car keys to the hotel valet and dragged Suzaku forward. The lobby manager immediately greeted them and bowed respectfully to them. President, madam, how may I help you? Prepare a presidential suite. This hotel chain was a property of the Bo AO Group. The lobby manager naturally complied with Mika Kito's request and immediately took the room card from the front desk. Okay, there's nothing else for you to do here. Go back to work. Mika Kito took the room card and dragged Suzaku to the elevator. Vermilion Bird had a bad premonition in her heart. Why did you bring me here? I want to go home and take care of now. She clung to the elevator door and stubbornly refused to go in. Mika Kito narrowed his eyes dangerously. Jiang Dao will take care of now. Hurry up and go in, or I'll carry you upstairs and let everyone watch. It's your choice. The corner of her mouth twitched. You win. She walked into the elevator reluctantly. He went in after her and quickly pressed the button. The elevator went straight to the top floor. It was late at night and the corridor was empty. Suzaku followed behind him and walked into the luxurious presidential suite. The door slammed shut. Bei Tangshin suddenly turned around and pulled her into his chest. His strong arms tightly imprisoned her in his embrace. He lowered his head and forcefully kissed her lips. He fiercely attacked her as if he wanted to punish her for leaving without saying goodbye for 3 years. Ugh. She twisted her waist uncomfortably and almost suffocated. His movements became gentler as he bit her lips and whispered, Idiot, breathe. He didn't expect her to be so inexperienced that she didn't even know how to kiss. This discovery made Bei Tangshin go wild with joy. He was her first man, and he would also be her last man. He licked her lips, tempting her to open her mouth. His nimble tongue quietly entered her mouth, entangling with hers. He held the back of her head with one hand and led her to the bed. His other hand swiftly unzipped her night suit and took off her jacket. The air was filled with an ambiguous atmosphere, and the atmosphere was heated. Suzaku was at a loss and could only follow his rhythm. She allowed him to take off her clothes one by one. When she was only left with her underwear, she was already pressed against him on the huge bed. She closed her eyes, not daring to meet his burning gaze. Her sense of hearing and touch became especially sensitive. She heard the sound of his shirt buttons falling, and she also heard the sound of his metal belt buckle being opened. The fabric under her palms disappeared, and it was replaced by hot and smooth skin. His chest was pressed against her softness, and his lips passionately kissed her chin and neck. Suzaku felt the blood in her body getting hotter and hotter. It was so hot that it seemed to be on fire. An inexplicable desire arose in her heart. She was both looking forward to and afraid of what would happen next. That night, the tearing pain was still fresh in her mind. When he kissed her dogwood, her whole body trembled and she nervously grabbed his arm. Mika Kito raised his head and looked into her eyes. Her watery eyes were filled with confusion and uneasiness. Her sexy lips were tensed up nervously. He thought of the pain he had caused her that night. It must have left a shadow in her heart. His heart ached even more. His large palm gently kneaded her softness and he whispered, "Wifey, don't be afraid." This time, he wanted to take it slow and let her experience extreme pleasure. His hand slowly slid down, and she felt a chill below her body. The last piece of fabric had been removed by him, and his palm was already pressed against that quiet spot. With a strong sense of love and indulgence, he led her to explore the mystery together. His rough fingertips touched the softness in the forest, causing her whole body to tremble. She couldn't help but raise her beautiful neck and mist appeared in her starry eyes. She didn't know what to do. She wanted to get rid of that throbbing feeling, but she couldn't escape the desire in her heart. His large hand was still wantonly teasing her as if that was the most sensitive part of her body. As long as he touched it slightly, her whole body would tremble. There was a burning flame between the two of them. She restlessly moved her slender waist as if she was asking for more. His whole body was tense, and that part was already hard as iron. However, he didn't rush in recklessly. Instead, he carefully continued to kiss her. His wet and hot kisses almost covered her entire body. When she was kissed to the point of forgetfulness, he quietly went in. Ah! Although they had already done enough foreplay, her body still tensed up at the sudden intrusion of a secret that had not been open to anyone for 3 years. "Wifey, relax. Don't be afraid." Mika Kito was already at the limit of his endurance. Beads of sweat dripped from his forehead and landed on her fair skin. He temporarily stopped his actions and used his hand to rub the part that fit. A wave of numbness spread from there. She gradually relaxed and opened her eyes slightly. Seeing that he was enduring so much pain, her heart softened. She took the initiative to reach out and wrap her arms around his strong waist. She shyly whispered, "It's done." He saw that she didn't seem to be in so much pain anymore, so he tried to move. The pleasure of being tightly wrapped came like a tidal wave, and he couldn't hold it back any longer. He followed his instincts and went deeper and deeper. Awesome novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 385. The slow rhythm gradually changed and became as fierce as a storm. She floated up and down with him, indulging in the pleasure he brought. Mika Kito had been abstinent for so long, so of course, he couldn't be satisfied with just 1 or 2 times. He hugged her on the bed, on the table, on the windowsill, in the bathtub, and devoured her over and over again. She was so tired that she couldn't even open her eyes. In the end, her whole body hung limply on his body. He hugged her tightly, pressed into the deepest part of her body, and whispered those 3 words in her ear. Tears fell uncontrollably. She hugged him tightly in a daze, thinking that she was in a dream. Suzaku didn't wake up until the evening of the next day. She found herself curled up in Mika Kito's arms, her hands pressed against his bare chest. He seemed to have been awake for a long time. He looked down at her face and smiled slightly. "You're awake." His voice was mellow and gentle. His chest was full of ambiguous marks, and she couldn't help but recall the intense affair last night. Her cheeks burned slightly, and she didn't dare to look into his eyes. What's wrong? Does it still hurt? Mika Kito saw that her head was lowered and she didn't say anything. He lifted her chin, his face full of concern. She blushed even harder and she softly said, There was an unnoticeable awkwardness between his brows. I used too much strength last night. I'll improve in the future. Suzaka's mouth twitched. She couldn't help but say dryly, It's not a matter of whether you use too much strength or not, but the number of times, he coughed. So your husband is quite capable, but he's also quite annoying? She snorted but didn't say anything. He kissed her hard on the cheek and reached out to take a tube of ointment from the bedside table. He unscrewed the cap, and a fragrant smell wafted into her nose. She didn't understand. What are you doing? I'm helping you apply the ointment. He smeared a little ointment on his finger and stretched his finger to the inside of her leg. She closed her leg shyly. I'll do it myself. Take your hand away. Honey, you're clamping my hand so tightly. How can I take it out? His tone was serious, but the content of his words was full of lust. She couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. She loosened her legs and gritted her teeth. Come out quickly. His lips curled into a mischievous smile. He did not do as she wished. Instead, he directly penetrated her. She let out a soft cry out of reflex. Her body trembled as she clung tightly to his embrace. The tightness he felt with his fingers made him involuntarily think of Feng Kuang last night, which almost drove him crazy. He forcefully suppressed the fire in his heart and slowly smeared it. After applying the ointment, Suzaka was already limp in his arms, and he wasn't any better. A certain part of his body was on fire. Considering her body's condition, he could only secretly take deep breaths to suppress his throbbing. Gurgle gurgle. Mika Kito chuckled darkly. Suzaku glared at him. What are you laughing at? Haven't you seen others being hungry before? Mika Kito stroked her hair good-naturedly. Don't be angry. The waiter will send the food over right away. The waiter pushed the dining cart and sent a sumptuous dinner to the living room. After washing up, the two of them wore bathrobes and sat at the dining table to enjoy a candlelit dinner. He considerately helped her cut the steak, poured wine for her, and gazed at her with a gentle and doting smile. All of this was so beautiful that it felt like a dream. In the past, she didn't even dare to imagine that such a day would come. She stared at his handsome face under the candlelight with a dazed expression. Silly, what are you thinking about? Mika Kito stroked her hair behind her ear and smiled. She smiled. I just didn't expect that we would develop to this point. He put down the cutlery and pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry to have made you wait for me for 3 years. 3 years was enough for him to sort out his unrealistic fantasies and start a new relationship. What he had missed was gone forever. He wanted to seize the happiness that belonged to him in this limited life. She wrapped her arms around his waist and leaned her head against his chest. A peaceful smile bloomed on her face. After dinner, she wanted to go home. She was worried about making a scene. However, Mika Kito said that before going home, he wanted to take her to a place. It was a beach very close to the town where she lived. The seaside in winter was already a little cold. The cold wind rustled, and the fishy smell of the sea hit her in the face. Under the dark night sky, a circle of lotus lanterns was lit on the beach in the distance. The lotus lanterns were connected to each other, and hundreds of them formed a large heart-shaped circle. After Mika Kito got out of the car, he opened the door for her and held her hand as they walked towards the bright lights. He held her hand and stepped into the heart-shaped lights. They were surrounded by a circle of lights. Under her surprised gaze, he knelt on one knee on the beach and held her hand tightly. He gazed at her delicate eyes affectionately and said slowly, Lin Wu Yu, Miss Lin, will you marry me? Her eyes were filled with tears, and they were sparkling under the candlelight. She smiled. I will. Although the proposal was late by 3 years, she was very happy. She was really very happy. He smiled and kissed the ring on her ring finger seriously. Then he got up and hugged her tightly in his arms. Wifey, come back to Tokyo with me, okay? She looked up and kissed his smooth chin. Okay. Surprise flashed across his eyes. He lowered his head and kissed her lips, unwilling to let go for a long time. Just as they were kissing, Bright fireworks bloomed in the night sky. It was a beautiful sight to behold. On the way home, Suzaku looked at her handsome side profile and couldn't help but laugh. "Did you learn all these tricks from the story of love?" His lips curled up. "You heard that?" She glared at him. "Don't forget that I'm a killer. I have sharp ears and eyes. Although you deliberately lowered your voices, I still heard it clearly." "Thank you for not exposing us." Mika Kito chuckled happily. She nodded seriously. "You're welcome. Although the tricks are cliché, the effect is passable for the sake of the person who used them." Mika Kito wasn't angry. Instead, the smile in his eyes deepened. "To think that an old man like me learned how to woo my wifey. Fortunately, my wifey is satisfied. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to end this. Is there anything you can't handle?" She looked at him with a smile. In her eyes, he was a man of indomitable spirit, a godlike existence that could call the wind and summon the rain. She respected him and loved him even more. He chuckled. Not anymore. After she agreed to go back with him, there was nothing that could stop him anymore. The two of them returned home. Now was playing on the sofa with Grandma Kimura's little tabby cat in his arms. Jiang Dao sat beside him to accompany him. The little guy saw his parents appear at the door side by side, and his beautiful big eyes rolled around a few times. He quickly abandoned the little tabby cat, jumped down from the sofa, and threw himself at Vermilion Bird's legs. He pouted and called out softly, "Mommy, where did you go? You left me alone." Jiang Dao saw that their family was reunited and quietly left the living room. Suzaku carried her son and kissed his cheek. "I'm sorry. Mommy had something to do. I won't let you be alone in the future." Now hugged her neck and stared at Mika Kito with his bright eyes. "Mommy, did you go out with strange uncle?" Suzaku pinched his face and smiled. "He's not strange uncle. He's daddy. Now, call daddy." Now blinked and Gigai called, "Daddy." "Good boy." Mika Kito was grinning from ear to ear. She took her son from Suzaku's arms and kissed him hard on the cheek. "Good boy. Call me that again. Daddy, daddy. I'll have a daddy in the future too. Yeah." The little boy excitedly moved his little body in his father's arms and clapped his hands, laughing and playing. His body moved forward and back, and he kept playing tricks. Suzaku was frightened and reached out to support his back. Now, be careful. Don't fall." Mika Kito smiled and comforted her. "It's okay. Our son is happy. Let him play. I'll hold him tightly. Nothing will happen. Daddy, you're so awesome." The little boy was full of admiration for his father and clapped his hands. Mika Kito's heart melted and was filled with pride. She kissed her son on the cheek and pulled Suzaku closer to kiss her on the cheek. Suzaku glared at him but did not refuse. The family was happy and harmonious, and laughter intertwined. Suzaku and Now were full of affection for this town. Before leaving, Mika Kito accompanied the mother and son to visit the neighbors and friends who had taken care of them. They gave gifts and expressed their gratitude. At Suzaku's insistence, they also visited Akiko. Mika Kito smiled and shook Akiko's hand, thanking him for taking care of his wife and son. Akiko hid his feelings for Suzaku in the bottom of his heart and generously gave them his blessings. In the end, with the blessings of the town's residents, they reluctantly drove away from this place and returned to Tokyo. Mika Kito insisted on holding a make-up wedding. He wanted this wedding to be even grander than the one 3 years ago. Xia Dong's family of 6 flew over from China. The old Tomac also came, and he brought a mysterious guest. Mika Kito saw the mysterious guest and hugged him excitedly. She patted his back heavily. "Holly, long time no see." Holly raised his eyebrows and smiled carelessly. "Ah Shen, you're hugging me so tightly. Aren't you afraid that the bride will misunderstand?" "Damn you. After so many years, you still have a glib tongue." Mika Kito pushed him away and punched his chest with a smile. "Why didn't you tell me in advance that you were coming out?" "Of course it was to give you a surprise. You see, I love you so much." Holly smiled ambiguously. He was released half a year early because of his good behavior in prison. After he attended the wedding and returned to Rome, Tomac would hand over the Anya family to him. Mika Kito teased, Unfortunately, you confessed too late. I already have a wife. Xia Dong shrugged his shoulders impatiently. That's enough, you guys. I'm getting goosebumps. Ha ha ha. Everyone burst into laughter. Miyamoto Hanzo appeared out of nowhere, his goatee curling up. Hurry up. It's almost time. Ah Shen. Hurry up and welcome the bride. Hiroshi Katato had his hands in his trouser pockets, and a pure and beautiful girl was holding his arm. The two of them were like a golden boy and jade girl. They were a perfect match and even spoke with tacit understanding. They said in unison, Uncle Hanzo, run slower. Don't fall. After the two of them finished speaking, they smiled at each other and made cute faces at each other. They were so sweet to the bone. Miyamoto Hanzo pretended to be angry and glared at the two of them. Boy Yuan, girl Xian Yu, listen carefully. I'm still young. How can I fall? Eh. The girl called Xian Yu was a Yuan's girlfriend. She wrinkled her little nose and stuck out her tongue at Miyamoto Hanzo. Uncle, don't be angry. We're just joking. A Yuan rubbed Xian Yu's hair and said with a smile, Xiao Yu, let's ignore Uncle Hanzo and go with big brother to pick up sister-in-law. Okay. Let's go pick up sister-in-law. Holly followed suit. Let's go. Let's join in the fun. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A large group of people ran away, leaving Miyamoto Hanzo and a group of child soldiers staring at each other. The old man was so sad. The leader of the child soldiers, Xiao Yi, coughed and comforted him seriously. Grandpa Hanzo, don't be sad. They really didn't mean to ignore you. Sob. Sob. Being comforted like this makes the old man even sadder. Grandpa, don't cry. Hai will help you cry. The little princess of the Bailey family, Hai, ran to his side and hugged his legs affectionately. She coaxed him as if he was a small animal. Miyamoto Hanzo immediately beamed with joy. The little princess is still the most considerate. Don't snatch my grandpa. This is my family. The little devil of the Beitang family, now, rushed over with his hands on his hips. He glared at Miss, who was a few years older than him, with dissatisfaction. In just a short month, he had been spoiled by the Yamaguchi Gumi. They liked to label everything with the words, my family. My mommy, my daddy, my doggy. Hai also had her hands on her hips. She lowered her head and looked at the little guy who was half a head shorter than her. She snorted in disdain. Petty. You're not gentlemanly at all. Now's little face flushed red. You're so fierce. You're not cute at all. Say that again. Not cute at all. Waha, I'm so angry. Do you want to fight? I'm a man. I won't fight with you. The two children glared at each other angrily. Miyamoto Hanzo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao were watching the show from the side. They weren't worried about their little princess. The little princess had already learned self-defense from Xiao Guai. If they really fought, Now would definitely be beaten up by her. Ahem, they weren't worried about Now either. Although Hai was very fierce, she was actually very soft-hearted and wouldn't really beat Now. A melodious wedding march sounded. Xiao Guai quickly ran between the two little guys and said, Stop fighting. Look, the bride and groom are here. Everyone quietened down as they cast their gazes at the couple who slowly entered with the music. They were dressed in white wedding gowns and white gowns. They looked holy and perfect like gods as they stared at each other with deep affection. They had knowing smiles on their faces as the sun shone on them, writing a love that would last until the end of time. Come and see. Song Shu 566. Chapter 386. The plane landed in New York, USA. Here, the sun had just risen and it was the beginning of a beautiful day. The sun shone through the huge glass wall and shone on the people walking slowly through the safety passage. Among them, there was a tall man who was particularly eye-catching. He was wearing expensive casual clothes, which outlined his tall and handsome figure. His fine black hair covered his smooth forehead and a pair of brown sunglasses rested on his straight nose. His thin lips were slightly pursed and his chin was as sharp as a knife. He exuded a lazy and leisurely aura. He stopped and took off his sunglasses with his slender fingers. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes were slightly raised as he looked around. His face was so beautiful that it took one's breath away. President. A blonde handsome foreign man waved at the man. Bailey Yun's lips curled up slightly as he dragged his suitcase towards his assistant, Kelly, who had come to greet him. President. Thank you for your hard work. Kelly took the suitcase from him and said respectfully, the driver is already waiting outside the airport. Outside the airport, a silver Porsche had been waiting for a long time. Kelly opened the car door and bent over, one hand guarding the door and the other making an inviting gesture. Bailey Yun sat in the car and leaned comfortably against the soft seat. He took off his sunglasses and brushed his black hair that was slightly covering his eyes. There was a hint of melancholy in his charming almond-shaped eyes. Li Duobao, this bad girl, was still hiding from him. When he had just gotten off the plane, he had called her again, but her phone was still turned off. Bailey Yun's slender fingers tapped on the leather seat. He collected his thoughts and looked at Kelly. Is there anything important going on in the company recently? Vice President, we have negotiated a cooperation with Genesis High-Tech Software. This is the draft agreement. Kelly handed a contract to him. Bailey Yun's eyes narrowed as he carefully read the document in his hand. If this cooperation was successful, he would be able to enter the China market faster. On the other side, Li Duobao was awakened by the dazzling sunlight. She rubbed her messy hair and sat up from the bed. Wrapped in the quilt, she lazily stared at the furnishings in the room. She used 2 seconds to wake herself up. She patted her cheeks and told herself that she was in a hotel, in America. God, after working overtime for days, she couldn't even tell where she was. She glanced at the bedside clock. It was already past 9 o'clock. She stretched lazily and wore the plaid bear pajamas to wash up in the bathroom. After tidying up, she turned on her phone. Dozens of messages and missed calls poured out. The names showed that they were all from one person, Bailey Yun. Li Duobao couldn't help but think of his confession that day, and her heart started to beat faster again. She bit her lip and opened the message he sent. Li Duobao, why are you avoiding me? Li Duobao, don't ignore me. Li Duobao of Li Duobao. Li Duobao, you despicable woman. I'm going back to America. Will you die if you talk to me? Li Duobao, where are you? I'm worried to death. Li Duobao, I'm worried about you. Tell me, are you doing well now? Li Duobao, I'm leaving. I won't give up. I'll keep chasing you until you agree to me. The last message he wrote was, Li Duobao, I like you. I like you very much. Li Duobao looked at these messages in a daze. His anger, his helplessness, his anxiety, and his deep feelings were all conveyed to her through these short messages. She couldn't help but think of the time she spent with him. Although it wasn't long, it was full of laughter and sweetness. She hesitated for a long time. Her slender fingers rubbed the phone screen. In the end, she clicked on a reply. I'm in New York. I'm fine. In less than 2 seconds after the message was sent, he called her. He sounded anxious. Li Duobao, why are you avoiding me these days? She bit her lip. I'm not avoiding you. I'm very busy at work. Bailey Yun's tone sank. Why didn't you pick up my call? She muttered softly, I'm used to switching off my phone at work. He seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. His tone suddenly rose, and he was overflowing with excitement. So you're not avoiding me on purpose? Li Duobao mumbled, Actually, it was a little intentional. However, it was really just a little. She just didn't know how to face him. Bailey Yun took it as her acquiescence and was elated. Where are you? I'll come over to see you now. She scratched the sofa with her fingers and said softly, It's not necessary. I'm going back tomorrow. Then all the more we have to meet. Tell me the address quickly. Bailey Yun was like an emperor, giving orders. No. Li Duobao, are you deliberately making me angry? Tell me quickly. I want to see you immediately. She puffed her cheeks. I'm not ready to see you yet. Bad girl, do you know how much I've missed you these few days? If you don't tell me, I'll call your airline. You have so many colleagues. There must be someone who knows where you are. Li Duobao took it seriously and said, No. I'll tell you. I'm at the Hilton Hotel. She didn't want everyone to know about this. Be good. Don't hang up first. On the other end of the phone, Bailey Yun chuckled. He then instructed the chauffeur and put the phone to his ear. What are you doing now? Lee Duobao touched her nose, and there was a touch of shyness on her face. I just woke up. His tone was gentle. Have you not eaten breakfast yet? She replied with an Are you hungry? I'm not very hungry yet. Then wait for me for another 20 minutes. Let's have breakfast together. Shi Gigai replied with an oh. Her voice was so soft that it fell on Bailey Yun's heart like cotton candy. His narrow foxy eyes were filled with smiles. Wear more clothes. It's a little cold outside. Got it. His voice was so gentle that it could drip water. She blushed even more. She bit her lips and lied uncomfortably. I'll hang up first. I have to call my mother to tell her that I'm safe. Although he was a little reluctant, he still let her hang up the phone. He played with his phone in his hand and urged the chauffeur, drive faster. Lee Duobao patted her cheeks in front of the mirror and slowly exhaled. She was so annoyed. She didn't know how to face Bai Liyun. Her delicate eyebrows furrowed. She thought that she should properly sort out her feelings for him. She changed into a white sweater, a red checkered skirt, lambskin boots, a woolen coat, and a fluffy hat on her head. When Bailey Yun's car stopped outside the hotel, he saw Lee Duobao standing upright with her hands in her coat pockets. She lowered her head slightly and stared at her toes. Her black satin hair was draped over her chest, and she was as obedient as a cute little white rabbit. He smiled brightly and jogged in front of her. He reached out and knocked on her head. He chuckled and said, Hey, come back to your senses. What are you thinking about? Lee Duobao looked up at him, a pure smile blooming on her round apple face. Her big watery eyes moved. Bailey Yun, I'm hungry. Bailey Yun smiled brightly and patted her head. Let's go. I'll take you to eat something delicious. She put her hands behind her back like a little old man and followed behind him with her head lowered. He took her to a very cozy restaurant. She drank the fragrant milk in small sips. Her stomach and body warmed up. He sat quietly opposite her with a doting smile on his face. He drank black coffee, completely ignoring the adoring gazes of the women around him. Bailey Yun had already eaten breakfast on the plane, but in order to accompany her, he ordered a fried egg and ham. He slowly ate the fried egg on the plate. What time are you going back tomorrow? Lee Duobao wiped the corner of her lips with a tissue. Tomorrow morning. What are your plans today? She shook her head. I plan to rest in the hotel for the day. His beautiful foxy eyes blinked and the corners of his lips curled up. It's boring to stay in the hotel. I'll take you around New York City. She smiled embarrassedly. You just came back. You must have a lot of things to do. I won't trouble you. He threw her a flirtatious look. Why are you being so polite with me? Those things will be dealt with tomorrow. It's more important to accompany you. Lee Duobao smiled awkwardly. Well, there's really no need. Bai Liyun gradually retracted his smile. His deep eyes stared at her porcelain white and lustrous little face. Did I trouble you? His tone was a little bleak and there was a faint loneliness in his eyes. She actually felt her heart ache and hurriedly explained, No, I just haven't thought of how to respond to you. So, can you give me some time? Bailey Yun held her soft hand and smiled. Duobao, you didn't reject me immediately. Does that mean I still have a chance? Lee Duobao blushed and tried to pull her hand away. He held it very tightly and she didn't pull it away. Her voice was like a mosquito's buzzing. I like you a little too. Bailey Yun's long and narrow eyes suddenly shook and a trace of surprise flashed past quickly. He held her hand even tighter. If that's the case, what are you still hesitating for? Her face was so red that it was about to bleed. She bit her lips and lowered her head, not daring to look into his eyes. You used to have many girlfriends. I don't know how long your feelings for me can last. I just want to marry an honest man. A man who can love me for the rest of my life. Do you understand what I mean? At that moment, Bailey Yun's heart felt as if it had been pricked by a needle. It was a sharp pain. There was a price to pay for being young and frivolous. When he was fighting with Suzuki Chisakura for Xiao Bao's custody, he already understood this principle. At this moment, Li Duobao's distrust of him made him feel the pain of eating his own medicine once again. He was silent for a long time, so long that it made Li Duobao's heart ache. She hurriedly looked up. Bailey Yun, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Awesome novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 387. Bailey Yun smiled bitterly. No matter what happened in the past can't be changed. It's only right that you can't trust me. I'm also full of guilt about my past. I'll definitely wait until the moment you're willing to accept me. He held her hand tightly. Duobao, I'll let you understand that my feelings for you are sincere. If I had known that I would meet you, I would have kept my chastity for you. The words, keep your chastity, might be an exaggeration, but it deeply hit Li Duobao's heart. Her heart trembled. In his eyes, she saw determination and affection. However, Yu once said that men were the best at lying. Li Duobao thought for a moment and said, I still can't give you an answer immediately. Bailey Yun, let's start as friends, okay? She raised her small face, her eyes as clear as crystals. Bailey Yun let go of her hand and smiled. Okay, I said that I'll give you time until you accept me. The corners of her lips curled up high, and her face was filled with a bright smile. She clasped her hands together with an expectant expression. Then what are we going to do today? You said just now that you're going to take me out for a walk. Bailey Yun chuckled. This girl's thoughts jumped really quickly. However, she didn't want him to accompany her just now, but now she changed her mind. It could be considered an improvement. His pair of beautiful foxy eyes curved, and he used his finger to poke her perky little nose. He said dotingly, I know you like to play, so I'm playing with you today. You can go anywhere you want. I don't know where to go. I'm not familiar with this place at all. Li Duobao frowned in distress. Bailey Yun raised his eyebrows and smiled. Then come with me. There's a cosplay comic today. Really? That's great. I like it the most. Then let's go quickly. Otherwise, there will be too many people and we won't be able to squeeze into the exhibition hall. Li Duobao's eyes lit up, and her face was filled with excitement. Bailey Yun's lips curled up, and he was in a good mood. Through this period of time together, Bailey Yun had already understood her personality. She was naive and cheerful, and her personality was like a child's. The things she liked were more childish, such as amusement parks, horror cities, anime, and so on. As for the shopping and beauty that other girls liked, she was uninterested. Therefore, after understanding her personality, it wasn't difficult to cater to her interests. On the way to meet Li Duobao, Bailey Yun had already checked the news. After finding out that there was a Comic-Con, he found a way to contact with the organizer to obtain a certain amount of preferential treatment. For example, they did not need to line up and could directly enter the exhibition hall through the VIP channel. The scene of the expo was very grand. Not only was it a carnival for anime fans, but it was also a platform for the anime industry from all over the world to display and communicate with each other. The world's top cosplay teams and cosplay experts were gathered here, as well as internationally renowned anime artists, scriptwriters, directors, voice actors, and so on. The exciting and explosive scene ignited the enthusiasm of anime fans and shocked their visual nerves. It was Li Duobao's first time attending such a grand Comic-Con. She screamed excitedly with the crowd around her, shouting for her favorite anime characters and manga artists. Her round face was full of smiles, and she was in high spirits. Her passionate appearance was like a bright ray of sunlight, stored in Bailey Yun's heart, making him reluctant to let her go. There were many people at the scene. Bailey Yun was worried that she would be squeezed by others, so he stayed by her side to protect her. He used his arms and chest to draw a protective circle for her, allowing her to be wholeheartedly immersed in her happiness. Bailey Yun, look, cosplay Pirates of the Caribbean, Captain Jack is really like it. It's super stylish. Li Duobao didn't realize that she was in someone's arms at all. She excitedly tugged at someone's arm and pointed at the pirate captain in the cosplay group. Her eyes were full of red hearts. Bailey Yun was jealous, and it was very serious. He looked critically at the cosplayer on the stage. The iconic loose pleated shirt, pirate headband, exaggerated accessories, velvet jacket, and skull badge. The gorgeous mix revealed a strong sense of wildness and rebellion, especially the pair of deep eyes. They were unruly and arrogant, very similar to the characters in the original work. He snorted disdainfully. The cosplayer's figure wasn't as good as his. If he went on stage, the effect would be better. Bailey Yun glanced at Li Duobao with dissatisfaction. Her hands were clasped together and her eyes were full of red hearts. The jealousy in his heart grew stronger. He put his arm around her shoulder and dragged her out of the exhibition area. "What are you doing? I haven't seen enough." Li Duobao waved her arms and struggled. "Let's go over there. Don't you like horror movies? There's a Silent Hill cosplay over there." Bailey Yun squinted his foxy eyes and showed a charming smile, tempting someone. "Ah, really? Let's go, let's go." Li Duobao's eyes suddenly widened, and she was full of energy. Instead, she pulled his arm and rushed forward. After a few steps, she suddenly stopped and turned her head. She missed someone's triumphant smile. She was confused. "Bailey Yun, aren't you afraid of ghosts? Won't you be afraid of cosplay?" "No." Bailey Yun was in a good mood. He rubbed her hair. He didn't expect this girl to still remember him at this time. "Really, won't you be afraid? Silent Hill is very scary." Li Duobao confirmed with him seriously. "Really, I won't be afraid with you by my side. Let's go." Bailey Yun smiled warmly. He held her hand and walked through the crowd to another exhibition area. Li Duobao tilted his head and looked at his handsome side profile. A smile bloomed on his lips. "Bailey Yun, thank you. I'm very happy today." Bailey Yun turned his head and winked at her. "As long as you're happy. Look, don't we look like we're on a date now?" She mumbled. "If you say so, then so be it." He blinked his eyes and moved his handsome face closer to her. "What did you say? I didn't hear you clearly." She was shocked when his face suddenly enlarged in front of her. She reached out to cover his face and pushed it back gently. "It's fine if you didn't hear me. I didn't say anything." "Little rascal, you just said it. Don't you want to admit it so soon?" He allowed her soft little hand to rest on his face as he spoke with a light smile. As his lips opened and closed, the moment his lips touched her palm, a wave of numbness suddenly rippled out from the place where he touched her. Li Duobao hurriedly retracted her hand like a child who had done something wrong. She looked around frantically and refused to look at him. The girl was so shy that Bai Liyun didn't want to push her too hard. He didn't want her to hide herself like an ostrich. He grabbed her hand as if nothing had happened and changed the topic with a smile. "Duobao, what's your favorite anime character?" Li Duobao said without hesitation, "Crayon Shin-chan." Bailey Yun coughed. "Let's change it. A man. An adult." She chuckled. Tuho Shirsi, a character from the anime Silver Soul. Looking at this girl's shy appearance, Bai Liyun's heart was filled with jealousy. Well, it was Tsukata Shirsi. While she was watching the cosplay show with great interest, he quietly took out his mobile phone and searched for him on Baidu. It turned out that he was a hot-tempered and cold person, but he was upright and very popular with women. Bailey Yun secretly remembered it and pressed Li Duobao's head gently. "Duobao, who's your favorite female anime character?" Li Duobao's eyes were fixed on the performance on stage. She took the time to answer him. "Kagura-chan." "What's Kagura-chan?" Bailey Yun continued to Baidu secretly. "Oh, so she's also a character from Silver Soul. She's a loli wearing a China-style red cheongsam. She looks innocent and cute, but she's actually very strong. She also has a very strong stomach. When she's hungry, she can swallow a cow. She's definitely talking about her." Bailey Yun raised his foxy eyes slightly, and his lips curled into a smug smile. He seemed to be thinking of something. "Ladies and gentlemen, please be quiet." After the performance, the host appeared with a microphone. "Today, in order to thank everyone for coming, we have specially prepared a small program. We will select a man and a woman from the audience as guests. The selected guests will have the honor of experiencing the real-life cosplay provided by us for free. No matter which anime or movie character you want to cosplay as, we can fulfill your wish. Now, please raise your right hand and let me see your desire." "Wow, that's great. I want to participate." Choose me, please, you must choose me. Everyone in the venue was excited. Li Duobao's blood was boiling, and her face was glowing with a different kind of expression. She hugged Bai Liyun's arm and cheered. This is so fun. I want to participate too. Bai Liyun's lips curled. Okay. But there are so many people. I might not be chosen. Li Duobao looked around. There was a sea of people, and everyone was raising their arms high and shouting, "Choose me." She was immediately discouraged. Bai Liyun smiled brightly. You'll definitely be chosen. Believe me, I'm a prophet. She stuck out her tongue playfully. I won't believe your prophecy. I'll let you see that my prophecy is correct. Bai Liyun grabbed her right hand and raised it high in the air. The host exclaimed, Wow, so there are so many people who want to try. Unfortunately, we only have 2 spots. Who are these 2 lucky fellows? Here. Many people couldn't hold back and shook their right hand hard. The host shrugged. I really want to give the enthusiastic friends over there a chance. Unfortunately, the decision is not in my hands. Let's welcome the organizer's person in charge, Mr. John. Add, Hongcha 866. Chapter 388. A man in his 40s slowly walked onto the stage and exchanged a few words. His gaze slowly scanned the venue. Every time his gaze swept over a direction, it would cause an excited scream. Li Duobao's heart also jumped. Her heart was thumping, and her beautiful big eyes were fixed on John. She didn't notice that Bai Liyun and John had a brief exchange of glances. John smiled and finally, his gaze fell on Bai Liyun and Li Duobao. He extended his right hand in their direction. Let's invite Miss and her boyfriend, who are wearing a coat and a white hat, onto the stage. Li Duobao looked in the direction John extended his hand and quickly looked around. She saw that the people around her were staring at her and Bai Liyun with envy. Only then did she believe that there was nothing wrong with her ears. They were really lucky to be chosen. She was immersed in great joy and even ignored the way Mr. John addressed Bai Liyun, her boyfriend. Miss, please come on stage with your boyfriend, the host said with a kind smile. Only then did Li Duobao notice how they addressed her. Her cheeks were burning, and she glanced at Bai Liyun in embarrassment. Bai Liyun smiled comfortingly, held her hand, and whispered, Don't be afraid. I'm here. She wasn't afraid. She was just a little shy. The audience automatically parted to make a path. Bai Liyun held Li Duobao's hand with a calm smile on his face and slowly walked onto the stage. The host smiled and said, Miss, may I know your surname? I'm lucky to be selected as a guest. Do you have anything you want to say? Bai Liyun glanced at Li Duobao. He thought she would have stage fright. He was prepared to be a hero and save the damsel in distress. He didn't expect her to be as calm as she was on the plane. Her cheeks were still flushed, but her expression was calm. She held the microphone in her hand and smiled cutely. My name is Li Duobao. I'm a Chinese. I'm a fan of anime. I'm very grateful to Mr. John for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. Sir, as Miss Li's boyfriend, what do you think of her hobbies? The host raised the microphone in front of Bai Liyun. Raising his brows, Bai Liyun humorously replied, Thank you for your recognition. Actually, I'm not Duobao's boyfriend yet, but I'm working towards that identity. There's an idiom in China called, love the house, love the crow. It means that if you love someone, you have to love the crow on her roof as well. I even love the crow on her roof, let alone her interests and hobbies. There were many Chinese in the audience. When they heard his teasing confession, they all cheered and applauded for him. Some people even whistled and shouted in Chinese, Together, together. Bai Liyun confessed in front of so many people. Li Duobao was so embarrassed that his face turned red, but his heart was as sweet as honey. Although the host didn't understand Chinese, he roughly understood what the audience meant. He humorously teased, Miss Li is so beautiful, so the crow on her roof must be beautiful as well. I wish the 2 of you a happy ending. Thank you. Bai Liyun politely shook hands with the host. You're welcome. Now, let's invite the 2 of you to the backstage to get your makeup done. The staff led Bai Liyun and Li Duobao to the backstage dressing room. There were many dressing rooms here, and the names of the countries were pasted on the door. The staff led them to the dressing room of the Japanese cosplay team. Stepping into the dressing room, Lee Duobao was so happy that she almost fainted. She saw many famous cosplayers, and they were all wearing costumes from anime characters. They were sitting in front of the dressing mirror and putting on their makeup. There were several rows of cosplay costumes in the room, and there were all kinds of styles. The leader was a very handsome man, and he was also a famous cosplayer. He was very enthusiastic towards Bailey Yun and Lee Duobao. He asked the female assistant to lead Lee Duobao to the girls' dressing room, and he personally led Bailey Yun to the men's dressing room. The leader's slender fingers supported his chin as he smiled. "Mr. Bailey, who do you want to cosplay as? I personally suggest that you cosplay as Sha Shengmaru. Your temperament is closer to him." Bailey Yun sat in front of the dressing mirror and looked at the leader through the mirror. He smiled. "Thank you for your suggestion, but I already have a target." More than an hour later, after the makeup artist's meticulous work, Bai Liyun's style was completed. The leader looked at him carefully and his face was full of surprise. "Mr. Bai Liyun, if you want to join our team, we will welcome you very much." The corners of Bai Liyun's lips curled up. "I appreciate your good intentions. So, my current appearance is considered very successful?" "Of course, it's very successful. This is the best cosplay of this character that I have ever seen." The leader did not hide his admiration for him. Bailey Yun smiled happily and touched his thin chin. With his current appearance, he should be able to charm that little girl. The sound of footsteps could be heard, and Lee Duobao, who had finished cosplaying, appeared. Bailey Yun slowly turned around, wanting to give a certain someone a surprise. In the end, before the other party could be surprised, he was the first to be shocked. His eyes widened slightly as he looked at Lee Duobao, who was standing not far away. She was wearing a white and black striped uniform and a pair of riding boots. Her hair was short, and her thin bangs slightly covered her slightly blood-red eyes. Under the hairstyle, her nose was high, and her chin looked sharp. When she smiled, the sharp teeth in her mouth were revealed. If he guessed correctly, she should be cosplaying as a vampire, and it was a man. No, Bailey Yun comforted himself. Perhaps it was just a man who looked like Lee Duobao. However, the man who looked like Lee Duobao shattered his fantasy. She had a surprised smile on her face as she jogged in front of him. "It's Jashiru Kikata. Bailey Yun, you actually cosplayed as Jashiru Kikata. That's great." Bailey Yun was wearing a black Japanese-style bathrobe. The collar was slightly open, revealing his delicate collarbone and a little bit of his chest. His hairstyle was exactly the same as Jashiru Kikata in the anime. In order to portray his smoking characteristics, Bailey Yun's slender fingers held an electronic cigarette. His eyes were deep, as if he was thinking about an important life question. Bailey Yun's mouth twitched. "Didn't you say that you liked Kagura? Why did you cosplay as a man?" Lee Duobao chuckled. "Kagura is only 13 or 14 years old. If I cosplayed as her age, it wouldn't be suitable. Actually, I always wanted to cosplay as a vampire, so I cosplayed as a vampire knight. Isn't it handsome?" Bai Liyun silently cried in his heart. Handsome, very handsome. The feeling of her pretending to be a man was actually quite good. However, he wanted to stand together with her as a man and a woman, not as two men. Ah, bastard. Lee Duobao didn't understand the pain and struggle in Bailey Yun's heart at all. She nervously and embarrassedly twisted her fingers. "Bailey Yun, can I hug you?" Bailey Yun was ecstatic, and the knot in his heart was swept away. However, her next sentence made him feel that his life was bleak again. "I really like Jashiru Kikata. You cosplay as if a two-dimensional character came to life in the third dimension." She blinked her wet eyes and said pitifully, "So, can you let me hug you?" Bai Li Yun was about to suffer internal injuries. Why was it that when he, a handsome and confident man, stood in front of her, she had never been infatuated with him? When he dressed up as a two-dimensional character, he was able to easily capture her heart. However, seeing that she was hugging his body, Bailey Yun felt a little more comfortable in his heart. He generously opened his arms and said, "Come." Thus, the vampire knight happily threw herself into Jashiru Kikata's arms. If one didn't look carefully, it would be two men hugging each other affectionately. This scene was seen by everyone in the dressing room. Some people kindly jeered, Some people found it funny and whistled, and some people quickly took photos of this gay scene with their phones. Sorry to disturb you. The host's assistant knocked on the door of the dressing room and walked in. His eyes rolled twice on the hugging men, and finally landed on the head. He asked in surprise, "Head, Mr. Bailey and Miss Lee, are they not ready yet?" The head laughed out loud and pointed at the men. "They are ready." The assistant was so shocked that his eyeballs almost fell out. Lee Duobao raised her head from Bailey Yun's arms, raised her hand, and laughed. "I am Lee Duobao. If the two of you are ready, please follow me to the front desk." The assistant coughed. He thought that it was two men, but it turned out that he misunderstood. Under the introduction of the host, the two of them made a grand entrance. What greeted them was the screams of the anime fans. Obviously, their cosplay exceeded the expectations of the anime fans. Bailey Yun wore a black bathrobe and wooden clogs on his feet, revealing a part of his calves. His exquisite and perfect facial features had a cold and elegant seduction. He had half a cigarette in his mouth and his eyes were slightly downcast. When everyone's eyes fell on him, he suddenly raised his eyes and stared fiercely at them. He arrogantly shouted, "I am the deputy head of the Truth Group, Josharu Kakata." The anime fans screamed wildly and were so excited that they almost fainted. There was only one voice in the entire venue like thunder. "Josharu Kakata! Josharu Kakata! I love you!" When Lee Duobao came on stage, her role as a vampire knight also attracted crazy cheers. As a stewardess, she was tall to begin with. Coupled with the effect of the stylist's uncanny workmanship, almost no one would suspect that she was a woman just by looking at her appearance. She hid the signature sweet smile on her face and showed her cold and taciturn side. The loneliness and sadness in her eyes broke the hearts of many women. Someone in the audience shouted, "Jolon Shusama and Josharu Kakata kiss, please applaud." The applause was like thunder and the audience shouted, "Kiss, kiss." Beauty novel, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 389. Lee Duobao almost couldn't maintain the indifference on her face. She was so embarrassed that she just wanted to find a hole to hide in. Bailey Yun reached out and hugged her shoulder. He shouted arrogantly, "You bastards, how dare you bully my woman? All of you, go and commit seppuku." Seppuku was a classic line of Josharu Tokata. The venue was once again in an uproar. At that moment, Lee Duobao's heart raced. She looked up at his handsome side profile and had an indescribable feeling in her heart. She had an impulse to jump into his arms. At that moment, she didn't want to hug Josharu Tokata, but Bailey Yun himself. The event was finally over. Lee Duobao heaved a sigh of relief. She shamelessly asked Bailey Yun to take many photos for her as a souvenir. She also called a staff member and asked him to take a few photos of her and Bailey Yun. She flipped through the photos saved in her phone and laughed foolishly. Bailey Yun leaned in front of her, raised his foxy eyes, and smiled slyly. "Am I very handsome?" Lee Duobao only stared at the photos and didn't look at him at all. "I'm looking at Josharu Tokata. He's so handsome." Bailey Yun was very sad. Why? What was so good about that grumpy two-dimensional man? He really wanted to find a place to lick his fur and heal his wounds. Lee Duobao stole a glance at a certain someone who seemed to have suffered a terrible blow. She covered her mouth and laughed secretly. After the two of them changed their clothes and removed their makeup, Lee Duobao went to the bathroom. When she came out of the bathroom, Lee Duobao didn't see Bailey Yun. She thought that maybe he was waiting for her in the hall. When she passed by the corridor, she saw two figures leaning against the railing. One of them was Bailey Yun, whom she was very familiar with. The other person could only be seen from the back, so she didn't know who it was. They were talking, so she didn't want to disturb them. She planned to stay where she was and wait for them to finish talking before going up. However, they were too close. Their conversation still drifted into her ears clearly. Bailey Yun said, "Mr. John, thank you for everything you've done for me." John laughed heartily. "You're welcome. It's our honor that you and Miss Lee are satisfied." Bailey Yun smiled and shook hands with him. "I wish us a pleasant cooperation. I look forward to working with you." The two exchanged a few more pleasantries and ended the conversation. John left in another direction. Li Duobao watched his back disappear into the distance before walking towards Bailey Yun. Bailey Yun heard footsteps and turned around with a warm smile on his face. It's time for dinner. What do you want to eat? Li Duobao stared at him with his big black eyes. You know Mr. John? He was the one who arranged for us to be guests, right? Bailey Yun rubbed his nose. You heard everything? Li Duobao nodded. Did you guys make some kind of deal? Otherwise, why would he help us? Fool, don't overcomplicate things. Bailey Yun smiled dotingly. He and I are old friends. I asked him to arrange for us to cosplay, and he readily agreed. Li Duobao looked at him suspiciously. I clearly heard you guys say a pleasant cooperation. John actually runs an anime magazine. I plan to talk to him about the game adaptation rights for anime. Bailey Yun actually lied. They weren't old friends, but he used the game adaptation as a topic to negotiate with John. Oh, so that's how it is. Li Duobao blinked. Bai Liyun ruffled her hair, his face full of helplessness. Aren't you focusing on the wrong thing? I've spent so much effort, shouldn't you be touched? Even if you don't faint, you should at least cry a little. Li Duobao burst out laughing. Bai Liyun felt like he was being mocked. He rubbed his nose with his face covered in dirt, and tears flowed silently to his heart. Sigh, who asked him to like a little woman who was lacking in her brain. Seeing him hurt like a cute little fox, Li Duobao covered her mouth and continued to laugh. He helplessly pressed her head. Let's go and have dinner. She suddenly threw herself into his arms, her soft body leaning against his chest. She wrapped her arms around his waist and said softly, Let me hug you. Bailey Yun looked at the little woman who was burying her head in his arms like an ostrich. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I haven't hugged you enough. Joshiru Dokata has already returned to the 2D world. She said in a muffled voice. I know. I'm hugging Bailey Yun now. Bailey Yun's face immediately brightened. He couldn't wait to sing a song. He unceremoniously wrapped his arms around her slender waist and smiled happily. Please don't stand on ceremony. You can hug me as long as you want. Go to hell. Don't take advantage of me. Li Duobao pushed his chest and said with her cheeks puffed up, I've hugged you enough. Let go of me. Unreasonable little baddie. Although he muttered unhappily, Bailey Yun still let go of her gigai. Li Duobao snickered. Bailey Yun drove her to a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown for dinner. Then, he took her to see the night scenery for a while before sending her back to the hotel. He sent her all the way to the door of her room. Li Duobao took out the room card from her handbag and opened the door. After hesitating for a moment, she said, Do you want to come in and sit for a while? Bailey Yun said in all seriousness, It's already very late. It might not be convenient for me to go in. You should rest early. Shigigai replied with an, Oh, and waved her little paw. Then be careful on the way. I'll go in first. Bailey Yun nodded. The room door closed. She actually closed the door in front of him. Bailey Yun angrily patted his cheek. You're asking for it. Why did you say it was inconvenient? Just go in and sit for a while. He stood at the door dejectedly for a while. Then he sighed and turned around, intending to leave. Unexpectedly, the door suddenly opened. He quickly turned around and saw Li Duobao standing at the door uneasily. Her face was abnormally red, and her hands were nervously wringing her fingers. Bailey Yun coughed and said, What's wrong? Li Duobao bit her lip and quickly said, I'll contact you the next time I come to New York. Goodbye. With a bang, the door was forcefully closed. Bailey Yun stood there in a daze. His smart brain seemed to have turned into a block of wood. After a few minutes, he finally understood what she meant. He beamed, and the corners of his mouth reached his ears. He excitedly patted the door and shouted, Duobao, when you return to China, you must miss me. I'll always miss you too. When you're not at work, you're not allowed to turn off your phone, you're not allowed to reject my calls, and you're not allowed to not reply to my messages. In the room, Li Duobao's back was leaning against the door. When he knocked on the door, the vibration was transmitted to her body. It was as if he was right beside her. Listening to his long-winded exhortations, she didn't feel annoyed at all. She cupped her burning cheeks with both hands and chuckled. Duobao, I'm leaving. Have a good rest tonight. Good night. The sound of knocking on the door finally stopped, and the conversation on the other side of the door also stopped. Bai Liyun muttered in a low voice, I really hope that girl will suddenly jump out and give me another hug. Unfortunately, Li Duobao didn't fulfill his wish this time. However, she softly replied, Good night. Unfortunately, he didn't hear it. It was quiet outside the door. Li Duobao opened the door and took a look. The corridor was empty. Bai Liyun had finally left. She stood there with a pout, feeling a little disappointed. Bai Liyun stood at the end of the corridor and quietly poked his head out. When he saw the little woman standing at the door in a daze, the corners of his lips curled up. He suppressed the urge to run back and hug her. He hid behind the wall until she returned to the room and locked the door. Oh, you've fallen quite deeply, Bai Liyun muttered in a low voice as he raised his hand and patted his forehead. For Bai Liyun, there were two things that were the most torturous. One was seeing Xiao Bao once a month. Sometimes, he missed her so much that he couldn't sleep. The second was his long-distance relationship with Li Duobao. She would stay in New York for 2 days almost every half a month. When she wasn't in New York, or when there was no way to contact her while on a flight mission, it was a kind of torture for Bai Liyun. There was only one way to relieve the pain of lovesickness, and that was to work hard and enter the China market as soon as possible. When the time came, he would stay in City A and marry Li Duobao. His wife and son would warm the bed. Everything would be perfect. Bai Liyun touched his chin and planned for the future. He worked even harder. Japan. Matsuda Industrial Group's CEO's office. Suzuki Chisakura sat in the office chair. There was no expression on her delicate and beautiful face. Her eyes stared coldly at the two men in suits who were bent over the desk. The stagnant atmosphere was suffocating. Pah! She suddenly slammed the desk and said coldly, Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? The two men bent even lower. One of them replied, When we found out about this, you had already ordered to withdraw the surveillance on Bai Liyun and his family. We thought it wasn't important, so we didn't report it immediately. B** starred. Suzuki Chisakura's phoenix eyes turned cold. She exuded a vicious aura. Your mission is to report everything you find out to me, not to judge for me what's important and what's not. If you can't even do this, what's the point of me keeping you? If she had known that Bai Liyun was in contact with Li Duobao, and if she had known that Bai Liyun cared about Li Duobao, she could have used Li Duobao to threaten him. Perhaps she would have won the battle for Xiao Bao's custody. We're very sorry. We won't do it again. The two men bowed deeply. The man who replied earlier said, Madam, please give us another chance. We won't let you down. Suzuki Chisakura's breathing steadied. She raised her hand to tuck her hair. A vicious look flashed across her eyes. She said indifferently, Okay, I can give you another chance. I hate that woman called Li Duobao. Teach her a lesson. Ad. Shinwoo 799. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.